Holy crap.
People persist in doubting the evidence.
Don't run and hide. Don't be afraid. Don't turn away any longer. The truth will set you free.
If the game is rigged, change the game.
You're listening to Jimmy Church, Fade to Black.
Game changer, game changer, game changer, game changer. The Game Changer Radio Network.
Putting all of our incentives towards Jimmy Church.
And now, your host, the captain of conspiracy, the prince of paranormal. This ain't your daddy's radio network show. This is Jimmy Church, Fade to Black.
Clicking on a few switches here. All right, we're ready. How you doing? It's FADERNIGHT. It's Thursday. Let's get this show cracking. Best night of the week. Hanging out with all of you. This is Fade to Black. Bespoke radio for the masses. Today is Thursday, May 21st. 143 days into the new year, 222 days left. As always, we are live from the City of Angels studios right here in Burbank, California. COA Vapor, makers of the Fade to Black e-juice. It's called Vader Loops. Just go to the COA banner at jimmychurchradio.com. You can use the promo code Jimmy. Get yourself the FADERNIGHT special. The FADERNIGHT Saturday morning special. How you doing? Fired up, man. Great week here. It's always fun to wrap it up on a Thursday night, hanging out with all of you FADERNIGHTs for KJCR and the Game Changer Network. And KGRA, The Planet. I am your oh-so-humble host, Jimmy Church. What is cracking, everybody? I would like to welcome everybody listening all around the world, all across the United States, hither and thither, to and fro, back and forth, up and down, east and west, north and south, far and near. This is Fade to Black, FADERNIGHT. Tonight, open lines all night long. The call-in number is 323-825-5045. You can also Skype in Fade to Black 14. And tonight, co-hosting with me is David Sereda. All right, big salute to the proud men and women in uniform all around the world fighting the good fight for us. For without them, there is no me, there is no you, there is no us. And you could not hear me right now. And I really need you to think about that for a second. All right. With that, let's get this show cracking. You guys ready? Are you ready, FADERNIGHTs? I get to the studio and sign in and, firing stuff up and checking things out. Man, and Twitter was just on fire tonight. You guys are crazy. Getting all ready and fired up. It's really really good to see everybody. All right, let's do this. FADERNIGHT, open lines. A couple of weeks ago, we had David Sereda on. And we had such, it was just an amazing show, certainly. But we didn't do what we normally do in a show, which is take calls, Twitter questions, email. I was so tuned in to listening and asking questions with David that everything got ignored. So I asked David, will you come back on the show and just sit and take calls and answer questions and get busy. And he said, absolutely. So tonight was the first night that we were able to get him back, and it just happened to be Thursday night. It's Fader night. Perfect night to have David here with us. So we will be doing that. I did go back. Well, the staff did. I didn't. I can't lay claim to this. Went back and got all of the Twitter questions that were posted. We've got all of those together. We got some email stuff to get together too as well. So just in case that any of you Fadernauts forgot what questions you had asked, well, we, got it together. So we have all of that, and we'll be taking all of your calls tonight. Also, if you remember, that show was on May 5th. That show was the night of the Mexico City Roswell slides fiasco. And that was going on that night. And I'm curious as to what David has to say about that too as well. So we'll throw that back out there. It's one of the things I wanted to comment on about Roswell or it has nothing to do with Roswell, but it was just called the Roswell slides. The way that I have never seen anything in ufology crash and burn quite that fast or interest lost as fast as that incident. I mean, boom. Everybody's done. They don't even want to talk. There's nothing to talk about. And then apparently, and I don't want to stir the fire anymore. I don't want to stoke the coals. I don't want to fan the flames. I don't want to do any of that. But I got email today about Mr. Musan apparently offering a $10,000 reward to anybody that can prove that that was an alien in either that image or another one or something. And I went back and I read what it was. Now, I don't know if he did that during the presentation on May 5th or if this has happened since then. And I have, if I'm Jaime, I back off. Take a couple steps back, take a deep breath, and probably keep your mouth shut. That's what I would do. But if this was offered up that night of May 5th, that's one thing. If this has come out post-haste after May 5th, and he's throwing this number out there and he wants to add anything to this photograph, or in his comments where if this was from if you can show that another museum shot of it or whatever, you know what? Let it go, brother. Just let it go. Take a couple steps back. And if anybody out there has any other information about this, I tried to check it out today, had a couple of dead ends. I was trying to find out if it happened on May 5th or if it happened afterwards. So I'll throw that out to all the Fadernauts, everybody listening to the show right now, which is exactly what he should have done in the first place, right? He should have just let everybody else out there do the work for him. Well, I'll do it for him right now. I want to know, did he say this after May 5th or during the presentation? During the presentation, it doesn't hold water. I don't care. It's whatever. But it's after the presentation. Dude, what are you doing? Let it go. So we'll find out. It will pop up here in Twitter here in just a minute. Or somebody can also shoot me an email. Oh, man, I left my phone on. Did everybody just hear that? That's what my text sounds like when it comes in. All right, let's get the show cracking. I'm ready. Tonight's Fader Night. David Sereda will be with us. Open lines all night long. The call-in number is 323-825-5045. You can also Skype in Fade to Black 14. You can also follow us on Twitter at JChurchRadio. Hashtag F2B is the sandbox. All you got to do, go search it right now. Go hashtag F, the number 2B, hashtag F2B, and the entire sandbox feed will pop up for you. If you really want to get in the play, just download TweetDeck and get yourself a hashtag F2B column going right there. You will never tweet through Twitter ever again. You will only use TweetDeck. TweetDeck is the way to go. All right, let's get the show cracking. I am so fired up. Don't forget, next week, Joshua Tree. Contact in the Desert. And we need to start running we're going to burn some more commercials. We went back and we were listening, and somebody pointed out that the commercials that we're running for Contact in the Desert say, May is upon us, or May will soon be upon us. Well, you know what? We're today's the 21st. So we are, 3 weeks into May? So we got to get some new stuff going. All right, let's get this show cracking. Today, actor, one of my favorites, actor Judge Reinhold is 58 years old. 58 years old. Where'd the time go? Fast Times at Ridgemont High. Brad Hamilton. Brad Hamilton. Judge Reinhold. One of the great movies of all time. Still, I will watch it anytime it's on. Mr. T is 63 years old today. And how about this one? I had to do this. This shows you where I come from. Mr. Creepy Pasta is 27 years old. Who here, I want to see in Twitter, who here goes and listens to Mr. Creepy Pasta? Who does that? Who does that? Mr. Creepy Pasta. That's a good late night nightmare stuff. Ronald Isley is 74 years old today. Ronald Isley is the only guy to ever point a gun at me and live to talk about it. That's right. He did. And he was serious, too, by the way. Ronald Isley. I've told that story before on the air. He was married to Angela Wimbush, and one night I was in his house. I was working. He was in bed, and Angela left the house to go to Wendy's, actually, to go get some food. It was late at night. It was like 10 o'clock at night. And I walk out of this room on the second floor, and I'm going to the bathroom. And I think I went to the bathroom. I was coming back out of the bathroom, and there's Ronald in the dark in a robe with this big chrome gun pointed straight at my face. Yeah, it was very uncomfortable. But anyway, Ronald Isley, cool dude. He apologized. It could have ended really badly. Ronald Isley, 74 years old today, singer of the Isley Brothers, by the way. Singer Leo Sayer today is 67 years old. And I love Leo, man. 67. Two really cool songs, if you remember. You Make Me Feel Like Dancing, which to this day still makes me dance. That's a happy song. And When I Need You. Remember that song? Leo Sayer. Unbelievable. 67 years old. Actress Fairuza Balk is 41. And I couldn't believe, is she really 41 years old? I always thought she was much, 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 much younger than that. 41 years old. Our dead guy's birthday today is, moment of silence, Notorious B.I.G., 1972 to 1997. Died at the age of 24. As we know, he was also known as Biggie Smalls, considered to be one of the greatest rappers of all time. His debut album was Ready to Die. Remember, in 1994, which made him an absolute hip-hop icon and won him a Billboard Music Award for Rap Artist of the Year in 1995. He was gunned down right here in Los Angeles, California in 1997. And as big a news as that was, and as many witnesses as there was to that shooting, it is a cold case file, still unsolved to this day. All right. Happy birthday, Notorious B.I.G. Let's do a Twitter. For Twitter tonight, and we're heading into our first break here. For Twitter, I had to do this. This is for me. Let me indulge myself. And I know all of you Fadernauts are right here with me. I want to see all of your best quotes, your favorite quotes from Fast Times at Ridgemont High. And you can quote the whole movie. I get that. But what are your favorites? I want to see your favorite quotes from Fast Times at Ridgemont High. When I come back after the break, I'll read some of those postings out to the world. This is Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church, on the Game Changer Network and KGRA The Planet. Tonight, David Sereda is with us. He'll be co-hosting, taking your calls, and answering all of your questions. Only on the Game Changer Network and KGRA The Planet. What are your quotes? What are your favorite lines from Fast Times at Ridgemont High? I'll read them when we come back after this short break. Stay with us.
You're listening to Jimmy Church, Fade to Black.
Fade to Black will now pause for alien identification.
The station that talks the net. KGRA Radio.
What's up, revolutionaries? It's me, Jimmy Church. Do you have an IRS or state tax issue? Well, I did, and I called national tax experts. My problems were fixed, done, fini, and man, I gotta tell you, it was a relief. National Tax Experts are a recognized tax office that services clients in all 50 states. It doesn't matter where you live. Give them a call. I'm telling you, they take the time to understand each and every client's individual financial status as well as their financial goals. And that's exactly what you need, my brother, when you're taking on the evil three-letter. So, seriously, give them a call today at 1-877-909-5444. Again, 1-877-909-5444. Or go check out their website, www.nattaxexperts.com. That's NATTAXEXPERTS.com. Tell them Jimmy sent you.
9 out of 10 geneticists agree.
Fade to Black is not your father's radio show on the Game Changer Radio Network and KGRA, the planet.
Hi, this is Chase Kletsky with Fate Magazine Radio, and you're listening to Jimmy Church and Fade to Black on the Game Changer Network and the KGRA digital broadcast station where the Fadernauts rock.
Yeah. It's Fader nights, Thursday nights. I'm jacked. I'm fired up. And you know why? It's called Power Bites. Take them every day. Power Bites. It's a complete multivitamin mineral formula designed to naturally boost your energy. This multivitamin goes right to work. It does. I take it every single day. Got it right here in the studio. Staring at me. The Green Turtle Bay Vitamin Company are dedicated nutritionists and have been producing Power Bites for over 20 years right here in the United States of America. They produce high-quality nutritional, dietary, and health supplements in small, fresh, potent batches and ship direct to you. To order, go to their website. It's very simple, energywave.com. That's energywave.com. Use the promo code KGRA and get free shipping on your order. You can also call 1-800-TURTLE-5. Live operators are standing by. That's 1-800-887-8535. You want to be like me? You want to get that energy? You want Power Bites. Also, I take the little supplement that goes along with it called Power Mate. Do it. All right. Oh, I got this email from K-28. I asked yesterday how many submarines that North Korea has. Sent me an email. Kay says, according to Google search, and he sent me the attachment, North Korea has 70 submarines as of 2014. And then Kay says, now, is my junk drawer prize still safe? 70 submarines. How big is North Korea? What is it, about the size of Indiana? They have 70 submarines? I doubt it. I think they got 2. They've got 70. 68 of them are parked. They don't have 70 submarines. And I understand that's what they say. I get that. I do. I get that. All right, let's go. Let's get to the news that you know nothing about. And it is Thursday, man. It's Fader Night. Open lines all night long, 323-825-5045. So I've got tons of news to read all night long. I'll be doing that. But first, on this day in history, in 1901, Connecticut enacts the first speed limit law. Connecticut, 1901. How fast were they going in 1901? 20, 22. This day in 1992, Amy Fisher, the Long Island Lolita, was arrested. And in 1955, on this very day, in 1955, the world changed because Chuck Berry recorded Maybelline. That's right. All right, let's get to some Fader facts. You know, when you get to Fader Night and it's Fader facts, you just know that is exactly, I know what you guys do. You tune into the show, you get through the Fader facts, and then you go about your day. I get that. I do. I get that. So let me share them with you. Are you ready? Here's the first Fader fact. Make you Fader smart. You go to that Jimmy School of Knowledge. That's what you do. You're going to do right now. The biggest black holes shouldn't exist. There's not enough time in the universe for them to gain so much mass. That's a Fader fact. Here's another one for you. Charles de Gaulle's final words. You ready? Charles de Gaulle's final words were, "It hurts," end quote. And with that, rigor mortis begins within 6 hours of death, starting with the eyelids. Yeah. In its shell, the cashew is surrounded by a caustic oil that will burn the skin. I always wonder why you never see shelled cashews like peanuts or anything else. But there you go. That's why. In Scotland, Fadernauts, remember this. In Scotland, you are on the wrong side of the law if you are drunk and in possession of a cow. And those are Fader facts. All right. I got some breaking news from Barrett here. I'm going to get in. You know what? Let me do this now. If anybody, I want you to, any of you verified Fadernauts, if you are a Fadernaut and you live in Memphis and you want to go to CITD, email me. Email Rita. If you're a Fadernaut, a vetted real Fadernaut, and you live in Memphis, email me or Rita. We'll get you to CITD. All right? There you go. That's the first message. Second, I want to thank Carol Peralt for the painting that she sent us this week. Thank you so much. Thank you, Carol. All right. Now, man, I'm out of time. I've got all this news. All right. Let's get to the good stuff. All 6 of the Baltimore police officers arrested were indicted today on charges connected with the death of Freddie Gray. The indictments came after prosecutors presented evidence to a grand jury for the last 2 weeks. Baltimore City State's Attorney Marilyn Mosby said Gray's death last month after allegedly suffering a devastating spinal injury while in police custody sparked protests and riots in Baltimore. We all know about that. The 6 officers faces charges that, if they are convicted, could lead to decades in prison. Among them, illegal arrest, misconduct, assault, and involuntary manslaughter. Officer Caesar Goodson Jr. is facing the most. He was the transport guy. He was the guy driving the van. He faces the most charges and the most severe second-degree depraved heart murder. NASA, are you ready? You want to get hired? NASA is considering allowing a team of researchers, teachers, artists, and engineers to upload an interstellar message to the agency's New Horizons spacecraft, which will perform the first ever flyby of Pluto on July 14th. This project, known as the One Earth Message, is being led by John Lomberg, who was a design director for the Golden Records that were placed aboard NASA's twin Voyager spacecraft before their 1977 launch to teach any aliens that might encounter the probes about humanity and its home planet. That's right here on Earth. And I'm just saying, if that's what they want to do, are they suggesting that there's a possibility that something do they know something that we don't? That's all that I'm saying. I don't think they would waste their time with this. But if you want to, contact NASA, get involved. Get the message together. I was thinking about doing a little Fade to Black thing. Send them out. Send them the intro, the Space Boy intro to Fade to Black. A recently unearthed stone toolkit consisting of hammerstones, anvils, worked cobblestones, and other items dates to 3.3 million years ago, predating our genus Homo by over 500,000 years, according to a new study. The items, described as in the latest issue of the journal Nature, are now the oldest stone tools ever found. They show that early humans, essentially proto-humans, used and made stone tools 3.3 million years ago, which is about 700,000 years earlier than previously earliest known dates for any stone tools at all. That's right. Maybe they built the pyramids. A mysterious... Now, this is in a related story. I always wanted to say that. And in related news, a mysterious ancient relative of humanity known as Littlefoot apparently roamed the earth about the same time as the famed Lucy, suggesting that ancestors of humans may have existed with significant diversity across a good part of Africa, researchers now say. This finding comes from evidence suggesting that the mysterious human relative was buried some 3.7 million years ago, more recently than thought, and this new date may one day help shed light on which region and which species gave rise to humanity. And if you think about it, that's 3.7 million years ago. What was the previous story? 3.3 million. So in 500,000 years, we went from that to cobblestones, anvils. So interesting. All right. I got to get this one in. This is cool. 12 towers, 10,000 rooms, and 70, that's a 7 and a 0, 70 restaurants, plus helipads, a full-size convention center. That's the plan for the Abraj Khudai, a complex in Mecca, Saudi Arabia, that's set to become the world's largest hotel by room count when it opens in 2017. Designed by architectural firm Dar Al-Hajda, the $3.5 billion site is currently under construction. It's almost done and will stretch across 1.4 million square meters. Now, currently, what is the largest hotel in the world? I love Vader knowledge. What is the largest hotel in the world? It's the MGM Grand in Las Vegas. It's only got 6,198 rooms. And that is half of the news that you don't know nothing about. We'll finish it up through the rest of the show. When I come back after the break, we'll have David Sereda with us. It is Fader Night. We'll be taking your calls all night long. I've got all of the questions lined up from 2 weeks ago, emails and everything else. And then we'll be taking your calls all night long on Fader Night. 323-825-5045 on the Game Changer Network and KGRA, The Planet. We'll be back right after this. Stay with us.
This is Fade to Black with Jimmy Church on the Game Changer Radio Network and KGRA, the Global Radio Alliance.
The station that talks the net. KGRA Radio.
Hi, this is Jimmy Church of Fade to Black. Today, everybody, the Fadernauts and planet Earth is vaping. And I'm very proud to announce our very own e-juice. When we were approached by City of Angels Vapor about Fade to Black e-juice, I wanted to make sure that it was the very best and that the flavors were something that I could create myself. And we did just that. Introducing Fade to Black Fader Loops. This will take you right back to Saturday morning cartoons and your favorite bowl of Fruity Loopy cereal. Just click on the banner or go to www.coavapor.com. Enter the promo code Jimmy for the Fader Not special. That's www.coavapor.com. Go back, Lee Tappy.
Imagine no longer being tied down to your computer, but having the freedom to take live talk radio with you anywhere you go. TalkStream Live introduces our first ever iPhone application. The talk shows you follow now follow you. And your iPhone is now the fastest and easiest way to stay connected to the best talk radio on the internet. Let TalkStream Live transform the way you listen to radio. Listen to live talk shows 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Mobile talk radio from TalkStream Live. Now available in the iTunes App Store.
This is Toby Kebbell. You're listening to JimmyChurchRadio.com. Don't hurt me, Jimmy. I'm only little.
Hey, I'm Adrian Grenier.
And this is Ari Gold.
We're the Honey Brothers.
Yes.
We are of the Honey Brothers. Hey, I'm Adrian Grenier.
And I'm Ari Gold.
We're the Honey Brothers.
And you're listening to Jimmy Church.
The Revolution.
Attention, all Fadernauts. Studio Dome has a special deal on their SD1 Bluetooth speaker. Just go to JimmyChurchRadio.com, click on their banner, enter the promo code Jimmy, and you get $40 off and free shipping on the SD1. It's voice activated, comes with a USB antenna, cables, and a carry bag. Never listen to your phone, tablet, or laptop speakers ever again. It's the only way to listen to Fade to Black. That's JimmyChurchRadio.com, Studio Dome banner, promo code Jimmy. Go back, Lee Tappy. All right, everybody, welcome back. This is Fade to Black. Tonight is Thursday, which means it is Fader Nights. Open lines all night long. Tonight, co-hosting with me, Mr. David Sereda, back with us after 2 weeks to answer all of your questions, take your calls, have some fun, we'll get serious and maybe not too as well. Hi, David, are you with us?
Yeah, hi, Jimmy.
What is cracking, my brother? Everything good?
Everything is good.
Hey, David, I don't know if you listened to the intro of this show, but I just have to throw this out there before we get started. And first, welcome back to the program. And thank you for taking our invitation up and coming back and fielding questions because, you know, we just had so much to talk about last time that I did not do my job. And I ignored emails and phone calls and Twitter and everything else. But I've got everything lined up here tonight. And thank you for the invitation to come back and field questions with us all night long. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Oh, yeah, I'm glad to do it. And I think this is going to be the fun part, to see what hits people, you know?
Yeah, exactly right. And I reviewed a bunch of the questions and was going through it. They're all over the place. And I wouldn't have asked any of these questions. And that's the beauty of having a very smart audience, you know, and they're curious and they want to know. So we'll get to all that in a second. Now, in the intro of the show, I talked about, and I ignored Twitter, and I want to go back and do this. You remember the movie Fast Times at Ridgemont High?
Oh, yeah.
How many times did you see that movie?
Well, it was so long ago, you know, maybe 3 or 4.
Okay. Well, you know, it's a favorite of our generation.
Mm-hmm.
And I had posed out there, I said to Twitter, I said, okay, what are your favorite quotes from the movie? And I just flipped over to Twitter, and they're just lined up. And it's funny because you can almost quote the whole movie. And going back, do you have a favorite line from the movie?
Oh, I can't say I remember a single line from the movie. It's, you know, it's like a, you know, it's that era. You had to be alive at that time of, you know, history to really appreciate it, you know? I mean, high school, sex, drugs, rock and roll. I mean,
right. Which was the 80s, certainly. Yeah, it definitely became a movie for our generation, and I'll never forget. It was filmed. All the mall scenes were done in Sherman Oaks, where we live, and well, down the street from Burbank now. But I lived in Sherman Oaks for years, and used to go to that mall, the Sherman Oaks Galleria. And I remember the first time that I saw it, I just thought, man, you know what? This movie is about me. And when you make a movie like that, or when you write a book like that resonates with everybody, that they think it's so personal, that it's about them, then you've done your job, because that's exactly what it should do. It should.
Well, when I first came to Los Angeles, it must have been right about when this movie came out, and I dated a girl from the movie Valley Girl.
Oh, right.
Which was more of a B movie at that time, but it had this similar vibe, Sean Penn and the Valley Girl talk thing. And, L.A. was a lot of fun in the 80s. It was so much fun.
Yeah, and Valley Girl also, that had a bunch of Sherman Oaks in it, and, Nick Cage, who was also in Fast Times at Ridgemont High too, as well. He's got one little or two little shots. He's like a cook in the background, but it's pretty funny. But anyway, it was just funny for me to go back and look at these quotes here, and I knew that it's a movie that resonates for us all. And when I saw that it was Judge Reinhold's birthday, it's a warm place in my heart.
Well, I think people were having more fun in LA in the 80s than they are now. I think it's more stressful, and everything is so expensive. Everything's about money now. But it was paradise to me when I arrived in Los Angeles. I stayed with a friend of mine who was a guest in a house in Beverly Hills. And I remember this girl, one of the most beautiful women I'd ever seen, was answering the door topless all the time. And it was just like, oh my God, is this LA? This is just incredible that, what people are doing here. And the clubs were great. They were really having fun. I was very into dancing. I was still, great in the beginning before anybody was doing anything like that. There was no yoga in LA really in the 80s.
Oh, no. That was the last thing. Yeah, that was the last thing on everybody's mind.
Yeah.
And so if you were in Beverly Hills, that means, were you venturing up to the Sunset Strip in the early 80s back then?
Oh, yeah. No, I stayed in Benedict Canyon. And
wow. You were right there.
Oh, yeah. No, it was, actually I would finish tree planting in Canada and go down there and try to write movie scripts that were conscious and progressive. And I had written this screenplay in my friend's office. It was going to be the opposite of Poltergeist. It was a little girl who got visited by angels and a whole family scene, but it still had its conflict and its scary stuff. And I got introduced to the head of Disney at that time, Jeffrey Katzenberg, and I got a lot of people reading it, but nobody really wanted angels, in Hollywood at that time. And my ideas were just too far out for them. But I had a lot of fun writing scripts and meeting people and the whole lifestyle.
I remember I took when I first got to LA back then, I took two trips to Hollywood with two different people for the first time. It's when I first got to LA, and I was innocent, man. I was a virgin. And I meet this actor through another friend of mine, and he drove a Porsche. And he was a young guy. I would say he was about 21 years old. And at that time, he had a commercial on TV for Coca-Cola. And so I just thought he was like Robert De Niro or something, It was just crazy. And he picks me up one day and in his Porsche, and he takes me to the Sunset Strip, and we go to Carlos and Charlie's, and which you remember. And I had never seen that kind of mayhem, maybe in the movies, I don't know, pick them. But to go and witness it firsthand, what was going on the Sunset Strip, it was a big eye-opener as to what I don't want to say the seedy side of Hollywood, but it was certainly a lifestyle, and it was pretty amazing to witness. Thousands of people on the streets and the clubs and the flash and the way that people dressed and acted. It was all about the self and all about the ego. It still is today, but back then it was on a whole nother level.
Oh yeah, I mean, there's worlds. You could never get bored of Los Angeles. When I became really addicted to the city because I was raised in the San Francisco Bay Area, then Modesto, California, then up to Vancouver with my real father, Vancouver, British Columbia, which is now one of the prime places to live anywhere in the world. And then, it was back to California and LA, and I was so addicted to living there that I would do my tree planting and then go there and just keep, hitting away. I wrote a Tesla movie script, I think I mentioned in our last interview.
Yes.
That, every time we were so close to selling a script, it was always really close. I wrote a lot of movie scripts. And I'm sure I'm one of, a million people or more in LA who had a movie script. But that was the game. You were either trying to be an actor and, or you were trying to, get in somewhere in that business, in that city. And then, of course, there's the whole music scene there, too, in the music business. And I was just really into the creativity part of it. I mean, I definitely had the look when I was young to be an actor, but I never really pursued that. Everybody else I knew or that I was dating was pursuing acting.
Yeah, I'll tell you something really funny. In the 80s, we had a house up in the Hollywood Hills right behind the Coconut Teaser. And we had a couple of 24-track studios at this house. But next door lived Peter Aykroyd, oddly enough. And
I remember when he had that house.
Yeah. You know the house I'm talking about. Nice house, too. Nice house. And his house, too, oddly enough, wasn't like your typical Hollywood Hills house. It was kind of like a mansion from the East Coast. It kind of had that kind of feel to it. But it was in our, across the driveway there, and the back of his house faced the front of our house. And there it was, Peter Aykroyd. Well, the point is, we were just people in Hollywood with a house in the hills, but that's who your neighbors were. That kind of stuff is going on in the front of you, in the back of you, to the side of you. And it's all over the place. And there was Peter Aykroyd, and it's the way that Hollywood is. And you could literally walk down the street and see people, and everybody has a script. Everybody is talking to somebody. Everybody, the classic story, the urban myth, the urban legend of Hollywood is you're a waiter, you're a waitress, you're a bartender, and you're developing a screenplay. But that's
or you're a producer, and I met so many people who told me they were producers, and a friend of mine, Andre, and I came up with this comedy of all these producers in LA that were living in their cars. They just had these fancy cars, but they couldn't afford rent, and they were all, just playing the game. But that's it. I mean, everyone's trying to make it happen there. I think it's hard to get outside of the box. I have personally read astounding screenplays that were never made into movies by really good writers.
Right.
And I've talked to, I took Sid Field's screenwriting course, and I've talked to a lot of top, well-known screenwriters who had sold movie scripts, and they said their favorite movies never got made. And I was a Spielberg fan right off the start. I mean, Close Encounters was my favorite movie ever made, and that was my genre. And this is a funny story, but I had this guy who was a Hollywood stuntman who said that Spielberg is going to buy my script, Angel of the Sea, and I have a meeting with Spielberg at Universal Studios on this day and this time. And this guy was a well-known stuntman, and he had done a lot of movies. And so I show up in front of Universal Studios, and he's not there. He said, "Oh, no, you have to go in by yourself. Spielberg's waiting for you." And I pull up to the front gate of Universal Studios, and I said, "I'm here to see Spielberg. He's buying my movie." And they said, "That's impossible. He's in China filming Empire of the Sun." And I never figured out what this guy was doing to me. Like, he was serious on the phone that I had sold my movie and I had this meeting, and then he disconnects all his phone lines. Like, why would he go through all that just to play a game on me? He got nothing out of it.
Welcome to Hollywood.
There's this con artists everywhere in LA. I mean, you can't possibly know who's real. I mean, there's beautiful, young women who come there and they're promised everything. They meet people that say they're a producer who are living in their cars and who are living on somebody's sofa, and they don't know what's real. I mean,
no, I you know what? I have to share this story with you, and just listen to this. So this is in the mid '80s. And I become friends with, and I can't say the names, and I'm not going to go into those details, but a pretty top 2, top 3 child actor, okay, right there. And I get introduced to his father. And his father is running this scam. It's his dad running this scam in Hollywood. He's got these ads running for photographs, come and get your headshots done.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And so they have this whole factory set up where you show up, and you pay to have your headshots, and then you go and you make a reel, and they've got somebody else shooting, right. And then you pay for a video, and then you pay for the auditions, and you pay for this, and you pay for that, then you sign on to their agency, and you pay for that. And they just get these starstruck people going in. So I go, and I meet him, and it's a long story, but I don't want to get into any of that. But he just turned out to be one of the sleaziest, slimiest, greasiest guys I had ever met. And I just thought that this is impossible. How, and I'm thinking, how do you sleep at night? And he was just one of thousands of people in Hollywood doing that same exact racket. And that was my rude awakening to Hollywood. I never, after that moment, I never trusted anybody. I didn't trust anybody, man. I don't care who I met.
Well, see, those are huge businesses, like getting, I was a photographer. I did some Pepsi ads. I did, a few small things. But in the beginning, I was more of an artistic photographer. I had mastered black and white artistic photography and did a lot of nature stuff. But then I started photographing women in L.A. and was very good friends with Pamela Anderson in the very beginning, and did some rather comical photographs of her in a aerobics line known as Hotskins that my parents owned and ran, which is a very famous company. Sarah Jessica Parker posed on the cover of Shape magazine in Hotskins. And my dad and his wife are meditators and yoginis. They're into all this consciousness stuff. And yet they were clothing Hulk Hogan and all the superstars in the bodybuilding world. And even all the all-star, many of the most famous, bodies in the business, including Schwarzenegger was actually gave an award to Trish Sereda, my mother, on my stepmother, who's married to my dad. And so, I had access everywhere in LA. There was so much going on all the time. But my main goal down there was working for this physicist on non-radioactive helium-3 fusion and using all my Hollywood connections to try to get $10 million to finish building this non-radioactive miniature nuclear power plant that NASA was interested in. All these Nobel Prize winners were around us all the time. So I realized I wasn't going to sell a movie, and I co-wrote this screenplay with Michael Mann on Tesla, and it ended up getting stolen and rewritten into a movie that is quite well known. It was with Keanu Reeves, and it was a movie about a fusion energy device. And we got a lawyer, and they got readers' reports from Universal that proved that they stole our script, but they took Tesla out of it. So it's the same story, but they took Tesla out of it. And we were going to have a lawsuit against, I think it was Fox, and then Fox bought out my lawyer. My lawyer wouldn't talk to me anymore. And so I was trying to get this message about clean energy to the world. And when I was friends with Pamela Anderson, which is interesting. Pam was born July 1st, so was Dan Aykroyd. We were good friends in her very beginning. I got her connected on TV shows in Vancouver, and I got her first modeling jobs with Hotskins, our family company. And she said, David, when I get in there, I'm going to change the world. I'm going to go in, and she's going to help me get connections to try to get all these, free energy devices and 0-point energy and non-radioactive nuclear fusion. I formed this company called Green and Blue Corporation to try to get all these scientists funded. And Pam was going to be my ally. And I would run into her everywhere. I'd run into her at this club called Black and Blue on Sunset where Billy Idol was playing. And she was with Scott Baio, and she gives me this big hug, and he's so jealous that she can't hug me very long, and she has to, play it cool. And so we stayed in contact for a while, but the more famous she got, she did do a lot of activism with PETA around animals, but then I lost touch with her. She just became too huge. And at that time, she was becoming just a superstar overnight, which is really hard to believe that this, girl that I discovered in a black and white ad in the Vancouver Sun was becoming this superstar. And then it just kept happening. I kept, getting more and more connections. And I got close to Michael Jackson's partners. We thought we were going to get money there. Michael Jackson wasn't interested in non-radioactive nuclear energy for future generations, I was told by his partner. Then we met the Resnicks who owned the Franklin Mint, and nobody wanted to do anything. And it's really amazing because as I look back, we spent $27 million developing this non-radioactive helium-3 power source in Orange County and in Princeton University. The physicist Bogdan Magwitch is someone I spent, probably 20 years of my life working with and around. He had Glenn Seaborg, who chaired the Atomic Energy Commission under 3 presidents around, Murray Gell-Mann, who was considered one of the greatest scientists since Einstein, who won the Nobel Prize in Physics, Norman Rostocker, who won the Maxwell Prize in Physics, which many physicists say is higher than the Nobel Prize. And I wrote this letter to Bryson. John Bryson was the head of Southern California Edison, and he brings in his nuclear scientists because Edison is thinking of funding it. And I brought this deal together. And I thought, man, if I pull this off, I'll be able to buy a house and my life will be really good. And Edison comes in, and this physicist, Glenn Duckett, is in such awe. He goes, I can't believe the people in this room. These are the greatest physicists in the world alive today, are all in this room saying we need to fund Bogdan Magwich's helium-3 fusion. Well, helium-3 is completely non-radioactive. 9 grams of it is so powerful. Basically, a cargo bay full of moon dust has enough helium-3 in it to meet the energy demands of the United States for a whole year, powering vehicles and homes and everything, and there's no pollution and no radiation. So, then Harry Hamlin from LA Law got involved in the company, and we spoke in Congress, and that would be in the end of the 80s. That was 92 or 93. We spoke in Congress on the non-radioactive proposal to the government. And we were being shut down everywhere. We were being controlled.
I want to jump in, and you mentioned John Bryson. I know John Bryson. Did you sit down and have a face-to-face with him?
No. Bryson sent Glenn Duckett, his senior nuclear scientist at that time, to meet with Magwitch. And what Duckett said when he met everybody is, we should be funding this. Edison should be funding it. But John Bryson said, we don't really need a new power source right now because everything's just fine, but we really think it's a good idea, but we don't really need more power. And the whole idea was that all these nuclear power plants were a threat to our coastlines, like, Diablo Canyon and the one down in San Diego. And, of course, decades later, Fukushima happened and utterly destroyed the Pacific and is continuing to destroy it. And we lost, and we didn't see. We're accelerating technologically with telecommunications, the internet, computers, but the way we're producing power is barely getting better. Solar and wind are barely meeting the increased demand, let alone the fact that nuclear power and coal and gas oil power plants are still producing most of the electricity. And, today we know there's a 150,000 gallon oil spill off the coast of Santa Barbara, which was paradise country for me in the 80s. I mean, just absolute, one of the greatest paradises on earth, those regions.
Right.
And so we're not really understanding our options. When Harry Hamlin and I spoke in Congress as really spokespersons in this congressional hearing, but we have all these Nobel Prize winners asking Congress, why aren't we funding this? And can we just get a measly $10 million? Their answer to me was, I remember the Speaker of the House Committee, Subcommittee on Energy, Resources, and Development, I think his last name was Bevel, Tom Bevel maybe, and he said, well, we can't just fund every idea that comes along. And I said to him, well, how many people come to you with scores of Nobel laureates in their signatures asking for a measly $10 million to finish something that the Air Force, they tested Magwitch's final design for a miniature 1 meter squared, 1 yard squared nuclear power plant could produce 1 billion watts of power with no radiation. And those tests were done at Kirtland Air Force Base under Major General D. Lamberson, and they said, it's going to work. The Super Cray 2 simulation said, this is going to work. And I was like, great, we're going to do it. And Congress says no, and then I got the Saudis interested, and Congress told the Saudis to stay away from this, and then Royal Dutch Shell threatens my life on the phone because I call them up because I'm asking them for money, and they said, you don't want to pursue this any further. And I said, well, yes, I do. And I said, I appreciate that you don't want to invest any more money. Shell had put, I think, over $3 million into this project. So that I had a phone number and a person to contact, and he said, you don't understand who we are. He said, you do not want to be pursuing this any further. And I said, look, I'm not afraid of you guys. He said, you have no idea who we are. Basically, they were telling me they were going to kill me if I kept going. And so that's what we have. We have corporations that monopolize governments not to fund what physicists know how to do, build a non-radioactive nuclear power plant. And the reason our government, it took me a long time to find out the answer. Why don't they want to do it? And it turns out that our nuclear power plants breed nuclear weapons fuel because they're in their highly radioactive environment. They can make plutonium from uranium, and they also need to manufacture tritium, which is a radioactive form of hydrogen with a very short half-life. And they need these reactors to breed the weapons fuels. If you had a non-radioactive nuclear power plants everywhere, then they would have to build special breeder reactors for weapons. But that is a bad argument. I mean, I don't see it. But the problem was it didn't matter who I went to. Jane Fonda, had a connection to her and get this famous rejection letter. There's Mrs. Anti-Nuclear Power and Anti-Radiation won't even get behind the non-radioactive, nuclear energy discovery of Bogdan Magwitch. And so it was brutal. So I was in with Hollywood trying to write screenplays, and the screenplays were going to make people aware. Then we were going to raise money through the movie. And there was Pamela Anderson, fielding possibilities for me in the beginning, and it just all fell apart.
Let's take a break right there. It's a good spot to stop. We'll end it right there. We'll pick up right after the break. Tonight, co-hosting with me is David Sereda. We'll be taking your phone calls, 323-825-5045. This is Fade to Black Fader Night. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Everybody stay right there. Open lines next.
Way out here, we listen to Jimmy Church.
You're listening to Fade to Black.
Always on the edge of the hottest alternative talk. Jimmy Church with Fade to Black. KGRARadio.com.
This is Jimmy Church of Fade to Black. May arrives soon, and with it comes another Contact in the Desert. So join me in Joshua Tree, California, for the 3rd annual Contact in the Desert Conference being held May 29th through the 31st. 2015 brings another awesome lineup of speakers, including publisher of Legendary Times, Giorgio Tsoukalos, New York Times bestselling author David Wilcock, journalist and conspiracy expert Jim Mars, former head of UFO Project for the MOD Nick Pope, investigative reporter Linda Moulton Howe, author and contactee Travis Walton, UFO historian Richard Dolan, and many more. You don't want to miss this. Fade to Black and KGRA will be there broadcasting live May 29th. Just visit contactinthedesert.com for tickets and information. That's contactinthedesert.com.
¿Qué tal, mis amigos? Yo soy Mario Carson, el tiburón, y los invito para que escuchen a mi buen amigo Jimmy Church Radio. ¡Claro que sí!
Did you ever turn to your radio for your favorite talk show to find that it's been preempted for this?
In the air to deep right center. Back goes Lewis to the wall, and it's out of here!
Or this?
And I'm ashamed of you, Hillary, for voting for it.
Do you have a favorite talk radio program that's not available in your city? Just go to TalkStreamLive.com for links to the best streaming talk radio shows. At TalkStream Live, you will find live talk shows 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. All your favorites are here. With such a large selection, you will also discover some new favorites. On the go and still want to listen? With the mobile smartphone, simply type TalkStream Live on your internet browser. Now you can take internet radio with you. You will also find hundreds of music, news, and sports streams. Best of all, the TalkStream Live directory is free and there's never a login required. Remember TalkStreamLive.com, the fastest route between you and your favorite talk radio show.
You are listening to Fade to Black with Jimmy Church on the Game Changer Network.
Oi, oi, I'm Reese Evans. You're listening to Jimmy Church. This is Revolution. The revolution will not be televised. The revolution is on radio. Ciao.
All right, everybody, welcome back. This is Fade to Black. Tonight is Fader Night, open lines all night long. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. A couple of weeks ago, we had David Sereda on with us, and we went nearly 3 hours of conversation and didn't field any phone calls or email or Twitter that night. So we're going to do that tonight. All of your phone calls, everything else, it is Fader Night, open lines. The lines are open now, 323-825-5045. 323-825-5045. And I have a whole list of questions here, David, and I'm just going to start with the top and work our way down. And these questions were coming in during our conversation, so they may be out of order, and we have to go back and kind of think about the context of the conversation. But the first question I have is, can you ask David about the galaxy clock theory and the mass of photons to explain UFO propulsion?
Whoa, man, this is the deep one.
Yeah, exactly. It gets deeper too. So we'll start there.
Well, that's a super question, and it's when I released my evidence the case for NASA UFOs on VHS. It got transferred to Google Video in those days and got millions of views, which was really amazing to see. Over 1 million views from it was put on Google Video. And what had happened in the film Evidence the Case for NASA UFOs, which was introduced by Dan Aykroyd, I had this experience on January. It was right at Tesla's birthday in January of 2000 and the year 2000. And in this experience, I literally see Tesla and two beings of light standing in front of me in the middle of the afternoon in my apartment in Vancouver, Canada, on the 7th floor near Kitts Beach there. And it's a cloudy day, and it's astounding. They're very bright. He's wearing like a gold cord with a white robe, and he flashes this galaxy clock mathematical sacred geometry model into my brain, and he's teaching me how you can see mass in its current state. So steel spacecraft, steel aircraft can't reach the speed of light due to what we call drag in airplanes, which is the pressure that air mass puts on the wing. Or when you're going through space, space is still very heavy and it pushes or impedes upon the spaceship and makes it heavier and heavier, making it harder and harder to move it at any increased velocities without heating it up or destroying it. So that's Einstein's law in a nutshell with a spacecraft. But that's because matter in its current state can't go the speed of light. But what Tesla showed me in that vision right in front of me is if I use this galaxy clock, I could not only show how matter could transform, and you can reduce the mass gravity effect. And your mass and your gravity are in this perfect relationship. In Einstein's formula, energy, E is as electromagnetism is equal to mass times the speed of light squared. So mass and energy are interchangeable. You can go from a solid state of physical matter and turn into pure electromagnetic energy, and electromagnetic energy can reconvert itself back into matter. But matter in this current state can't reach the speed of light and beyond, and Einstein's correct. But you can transform it by changing the frequency of the electron-positron orbits around the nucleus of the atom, and you can reduce the mass gravity effect to zero and then even sub-zero, and spacecraft can accelerate way beyond the speed of light. And so that's what the clock shows. But what's amazing in the clock is and I really need to make a video. I've been saying this for years. I need to make a whole video on it, on how it explains black holes and Einstein-Rosen bridges and all of it, just on that. But there's a section of the film, Evidence, the Case for NASA UFOs, which is everywhere now on YouTube in bits and pieces, of me and the galaxy clock, and it physically, geometrically breaks the speed of light. The physical structure in a single second in the clock goes faster than the distance of the speed of light. And you really need the visuals and me teaching you to see how this happens. And when Tesla showed it to me, I said, this is impossible. I mean, this is visually, clearly happening in the clock. Well, what was more astounding, actually, if you go to Vimeo, and you Google the vortex, or just Google David Sereda, the law scale, and you'll see right next to the law scale my film, The Vortex, and you'll actually see this clock. But when we were looking at these NASA UFOs from STS-75 in the black and white space shuttle video photography, we can see these UFOs pulsing. And when I slowed the pulses down with a really good VCR in those days, you could see the same type of vortex spiral coming out of a black hole in the center of the UFO, which is identical to what was happening in the galaxy clock. So I could see how they were working. I could see that these craft had a way to pulse the material of the craft and reduce its mass gravity effect. Now, John Hutchison, a Canadian scientist, kind of accidentally discovered something very similar when he started pulsing steel in many different shapes and sizes. And sometimes he would have to pulse the steel for hours to days before it would start levitating. Everything from a tin can or a beer can, a Coke can, to even a cannonball. He got amazing objects to levitate using the technique of pulsing and changing the state of physical, steel matter. And once it goes into this higher state of energy, gravity, because it reduces its mass gravity component, gravity no longer has the ability to pull on it, and it starts levitating. I mean, I know how this works right down to fine detail, but it requires amazing diagrams, and it's an incredible question that the person has asked, because this video predates everything out there on the subject of vortex coils. It predates most of the sacred geometry, vortex mathematics that's out there. I'm not going to name names, but I know these people personally. And I know from knowing some of these very famous people in vortex mathematics that they saw the Galaxy Clock video and it deeply inspired them. And they took that knowledge and they went with it and they started doing other interesting things with it.
The craft wouldn't build up speed. It would be instantaneous.
Well, see, physically, as my experience was with the Palladian craft in 1968 in Berkeley, they don't move through the fabric of space-time. So they can move through this fabric of space-time if they want to just cruise around, right? If you just want to look at Jupiter's rings and hang out there for a while and have lunch, but they don't go long distance through the fabric of space because it's too heavy. That's not what they do. That's why, NASA has the biggest problem with UFOs, because they said we would see it coming like an ocean liner going past the 9 planets, and they would be able to calculate the time of its arrival on Earth.
Right.
And these things just pop in and pop out. And I used this analogy, 2 weeks ago when we talked, like you're two fish, you're under the water, and if one of the fishes gets caught with a fishing line, all you see are these little ripply waves on the surface, and he's gone. You can't see the fish on the other side of the surface of the water.
Right.
Well, what's interesting about the speed of light is, you see, in a vacuum, true vacuum, not space vacuum, but a true vacuum, light travels instantaneously. But then when it hits space, it slows down. When it hits the atmosphere of the Earth, it slows down a little more. And when it hits water, it slows down even more. So it tells you that light slows down as it encounters different degrees of inertial resistance. See, inertia is both the energy of a body in motion and the tendency of that body to resist acceleration due to the medium it's moving through. So that tells you that we're basically underwater. We live in an atmosphere which is quite dense, but the space surrounding us is also quite dense in its mass energy, component. And when you look at what mass is on the quantum scale, the atom and smaller, you start to see that it's just particles and wavelets of energy and matter, exchanging each other from states of pure electromagnetic energy, which is light energy, going back into pure physical energy. So to get a spaceship to move, and first of all, most of the fuel is wasted in liftoff, with rockets and airplanes and their jet engines. But once you cancel out gravity, so you have to really understand this. Like, this wouldn't even be a good analogy, but how much energy does it take to move a bug around a mosquito? Not very much, because he doesn't weigh very much, but he won't go very fast because he doesn't have a lot of mass. But yet, if you reduce the mass energy of a spacecraft to zero, as I'm proposing in the Galaxy Clock, the energy required to go to the speed of light is pretty near zero. A couple of volts in microamps will move you at way beyond the speed of light because you don't weigh anything anymore. We're like cavemen. We say, I've got to move this heavy jet or this heavy boat through this medium, and I'm going to burn millions of gallons of fuel to go from here, to another planet like Mars. So we think, well, we can only go so far because we can only carry so much fuel.
Right.
And what these ETs have clearly figured out, and it was amazing. There's Nikola Tesla with these two other angels right in front of me. My eyes are open. I see them. And they're teaching me this. And it would be only a month later that I was in Maui, Hawaii with my friend Steve Okerlund, who spent a lot of money on the best quality VHS player, in those days, to look at the NASA footage frame by frame. And we saw the spiraling vortex waveform coming out of the black hole in the center of the UFO on the space shuttle footage photography. And that's the same as what the Galaxy Clock was showing us. It was identical. And see, then some years later, just a few years later, there were all these people. Nassim Haramein came out with his theory on black holes and the event horizon, which was very similar. And he was also hanging out in the Hawaiian Islands where I was lecturing on this stuff in person. And then all of a sudden he had his insights into vortexes and black holes. But nobody did what the galaxy clock shows. The galaxy clock physically shows the faster than light. And I know it's hard to see when you watched the video if you're not paying attention. But if you're paying attention, it's right there. And I get more interest in this question that you're giving me. And it's amazing, Jimmy, because you're giving me this as the first question. And it's probably the most interesting. The galaxy clock is probably the most interesting gift I was ever given from the other side.
When you are converted from the physical to energy, to make this movement, to make this to span this distance, how are you then reassembled?
See, that's just it. Okay, let's look at the center of the atom. This is really simple to see. Your proton and your neutron. Your neutron has more mass than the proton, believe it or not, and those are made up of quarks. And then you have your electron and your positron. They travel like planets around the sun. You know, you have different shells, which are, imagine you have Mercury, Venus, Earth, and Mars, right? So there's 4 planets traveling at different radiuses from our sun in these shell radiuses around the sun. Well, when you look at, the hydrogen atom has 1 electron and 1 proton, neutron, and then there's no neutron in hydrogen. And then, so they're like planets traveling around. But when you have complex atoms with, say, let's go to 4 electrons, positrons traveling in shells around the nucleus, which is like planets traveling around the sun, they jump shells. So if an electron, which is the furthest away from the center of the proton, jumps to a closer or shorter radius shell, it will radiate off part of its energy. And that, in order to become lighter, to sustain the closer orbit. And if it radiated part of its energy, it radiated part of its mass, because mass and energy are equal in E equals mc squared. So that means it became lighter. And therefore, as electrons go into higher and higher frequency, shorter wavelengths around the proton, they have to give up more of their energy mass equivalent, which means they're reducing their mass. But the electron has so little mass anyway that you can barely detect this change. My point is that what happens when matter at this level goes into super high frequency states, it starts becoming lighter and lighter and lighter. And there's a component in the heavier part of the atoms, which steel and everything is made out of atoms, that is known as the strange quark. And the strange quark is pretty heavy. And strange quarks have been recorded by quantum physicists to randomly leave the center of the atom and then come back, and then leave and then come back. And that means when they leave, and nobody knows where they go, the atom is losing some of its a significant amount of mass energy. So this is a natural process where the strange quark will leave and then come back. But you see, there is a way of controlling this where you can reduce almost all of your mass in a really high frequency state. The only physicist that ever went into this area is Paul Dirac. Dirac, who won the Nobel Prize, decided to strip an electron and a positron off of the center of the atom, and he watched in these bubble chamber photographs that they would spin into smaller and smaller orbits until they disappeared. They disappeared. Through where? A mini black hole in the center of the atom. But Dirac was arguing with his peers, were saying, well, they must have annihilated with each other, the proton and the antiproton, which is the positron.
Right.
The electron and the anti-electron. And he said, well, if they annihilated, there would be an explosion, and there's no explosion. So he said that they went into another dimension. Dirac was the one who knew where they went. And where he says they went is a place called singularity, where there's no more duality. You see, your atom, everything's positive and negative. So you have your electron and your positron, your proton, antiproton, neutron, Then you get into quarks, and there are quarks, up quark, down quark, anti-quark. You get into taus and anti-taus, muons, anti-muons, neutrinos, anti-neutrinos. Everything's in duality. So that tells you something. If Dirac found a place where everything there's no positive and negative anymore, he labeled it a sea of negativity. But it's not really negative, because a negative always tracks a positive. He didn't know what to call it, but he labeled it the sea of pure negativity. And he said, in this place where the positron and electron went, movement anywhere in the physical universe is instantaneous regardless of distance, because there's no resistance anymore, because it's all one. It's non-duality. And you see, Jesus in the Gnostic Gospels said, when you make the two into the one, you see, he spoke in this language in the Gospel of Thomas profusely, that the secret was making the two into one. And then you basically can move mountains. You can do anything you want once you do that. So Dirac is the first one to discover this place, but very few physicists to this day have ever ventured any further than where he went. And that place is where the UFOs go. They become single, and the way they reassemble themselves, because this is the answer to your question, is all they have to do is to create a frequency. You need a positive and a negative. You can't have a frequency with just negative, because it's all instantaneous. There is no time. At singularity, time has a value of 0, mass has a value of 0, gravity has a value. Everything is zeros. So when you're in singularity, you actually consciously have access to an enormous, enormous scale of the universe. I suspect that there are greater and greater bands of the singularity. Nobody knows. And at this place, all you do is generate the frequency of Earth, and boom, the singularity spits you right back out at Earth. If you say Pleiades, it spits you out at Pleiades. And that is because every planet and every star, because they're all different sizes, they all have unique signature frequencies for their locations inside of the fabric of space. And that is what I believe these ETs have figured. The really advanced ones have figured how to access the singularity and then spit themselves back out. Now, Paul Dirac took this on. He said, a duality is an oxymoron to a singularity. You can't have a duality inside of a singularity. So as soon as you're a singularity and you generate a frequency, that's a duality. It spits you back out. It won't let you live in it. But see, the singularity is it's a tool that the universe has. It's the place that allows you to go, and it's not a wormhole. It's not an Einstein-Rosen bridge, which is an impossible mathematical formula of energy and mass to move anything.
Hey, David, I'm going to stop you right there because we have to come back to this. I've got phone calls that are lining up, so let's start to bang out some of these calls real quick. Hi, you're live on Fade to Black. Who's calling? Say hi to David Sereda. What's your question?
Well, the question is real simple. I think I understand what this guy's talking about, and my question is, has he ever heard of a guy named Dan Sherman? And the question is, Dan Sherman was able to communicate, intuitive communicator. Have you heard of him?
I've heard the name, but I can't say I'm familiar with his work.
Okay, well, here's what he said. He said that he went outside the boundaries in the Air Force of communicating telepathically with these aliens. When he did, he said, is it okay to talk to you, ask you a question? And he said, it was not up to me, it's up to your unit, your training. And he said, well, I got a question. He says, can you travel through time? And the answer stunned him. He couldn't quite get it. I think you're onto something here. Because he said that we don't travel through time, we travel around time. So what you're describing is something that takes you out of a dimension of time, which we perceive as linear. And by the way, I love your analogy, and I understand it, which is kind of scary. It goes into some kind of quantum mechanics and physics and doesn't make any sense to the average science person out there. But can you kind of correlate those two, and I'll listen in. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. You know what? That's an excellent point. it is instantaneous, so therefore it's not linear, and therefore time is not involved at all.
You see, and I have an ebook called Singularity, and the way it explains the Big Bang is this. See, Alan Guth at MIT says no one has ever explained the instant of creation. They only know what happened after, but not the instant. At the instant of creation, you're at singularity. So time has a value of 0. Mass has a value of 0. There's no inertia because at singularity, there's no resistance. So inertia is caused by resistance. So time is 0 because everything's instantaneous. But as soon as you create a duality, which multiplies more and more and more dualities, you're starting to create the cosmic microwave background radiation, which is like a thick soup that becomes more and more dense, and then eventually, vortices start forming stars and planets and then galaxies. And as the soup gets thicker and thicker, you say, wow, how did the cosmic microwave background radiation evenly distribute itself without there being a time constant where you can measure its distribution? And that is because at singularity, it was almost instantaneous at the moment of creation. And as it got thicker, inertia increased and the speed of light slowed down. And as the speed of light slowed down, it appeared the universe was this old, 18 billion years old, or wherever they have it today. But that's only an illusion because we measure at the current speed of light and the size of the universe, it keeps getting older because it takes light so long to cross it. But that's only because they don't understand singularity like Paul Dirac did. At singularity, the cosmic microwave background radiation got to distribute itself uniformly and instantly, nearly instantly, until the soup got thicker and thicker and thicker.
Right.
And then it created this illusion of time. And so at singularity, time has a value of 0. So to go around time, as Dan Sherman is saying, I'm looking at a picture of him in his book online, you would simply not move through that dense fabric of space. You would go to the singularity. The real question is, do black holes lead, and mini black holes and micro black holes lead to the singularity? The true singularity that is evenly distributed as a substratum background layer, which is even more ultrafine than the cosmic microwave background radiation.
How would ET, or anybody for that matter, once you achieve singularity, how would you figure out how to come back from it?
Well, you see, it's so intensely blissful. In order for you to go into singularity consciousness, which I can do in meditation, it's so astoundingly blissful. You're actually experiencing in this consciousness, and this happened to me the other night, where you look out at the sky, and it's not an adrenaline rush high that you get when you're a mountain climber at the top of the mountain. You're actually inside the fabric of space. You feel the universal self, what the Hindus call the Atman, if you read the books of Moses, God says, "I am that I am." You see, the "I am that I am" is the I is not local to your chest and the location of yourself. If you point over there, you go, "I am that I am," meaning the I-ness, the self, is everywhere. It's the universal self. And what Moses learned was the same thing that the ancient Hindus have known, is when you go into singularity, you experience the universal self. And because you're already everywhere, the conundrum is there's no desire to move or take another step in a spaceship to go anywhere because you're already there. And you really are actually already there. And this is evident in, see, when Buddha got enlightened in 623 BC under the Bodhi tree in India, which, I traveled there and sat under the new tree there, what he found was he couldn't take another step. He was approaching the Bodhi tree. He was not at full nirvana yet, which is actually the equivalent of the 7th level of heaven. There are 7 samadhis. The 7th culminates in nirvana in Buddhism. And what happens is he can't take another step, so he stands on the ground. And if you go to India, they have these 2 giant footprints where the Buddha stood. Some monks say it was 3 days, some say 3 months. And some monks there told me it was 3 years he stood on that spot. And he wasn't even in nirvana yet. He was really high. But because he was already everywhere, he couldn't take another step. And the universe supported his body to not eat or move or drink for, let's say it was 3 days. I don't know anybody who can stand in one spot for 3 days and nights. The point is, at singularity, you're already everywhere, so you can't take another step.
Right.
And the problem for an ET in a spaceship would be if you're truly at singularity, it's so intensely ecstatic and blissful to be everywhere all at once. It would take you a long time before you would ever come to your senses and say, okay, I want to go pop back into my body in the Pleiades and appear there for a while and live in that illusion for a while and then eventually go back into singularity. I think what probably happens is the most advanced ETs just graduate. There are probably higher and higher levels of the singularity, and they just disappear from the physical universe. We don't see them anymore.
Well, wouldn't it be, and you know what? We're still on the first question.
With the deepest one right away.
I know, right? Is wouldn't the going into the singularity and coming back out of it, wouldn't it be controlled externally and mechanically? I mean, wouldn't you have to have somebody pull you back out of the singularity because you don't have a physical self at that point? You're nothing. So how could you do it?
All your atoms would come apart. They would no longer exist because every one of them is in a duality.
Right.
Every particle, every subatomic particle, right down to the taus and the neutrinos are in paired opposites. Well, see, that's a really deep question. I mean, I had an experience recently where I go into these deep, meditating every day for 35 years, so there's no way to describe to people, some people are telling me about ayahuasca, and I'm like, you guys have no idea how deep meditation gets. I played around with those things when I was young, but those things don't even come close to this. But I had this experience, and this was an experience where I was in what you would probably call the fifth dimensional state, where I was everywhere in the town of Nelson, BC, inside everybody's houses and outside and in the walls all at the same time. I knew where every person was, how many people were on their way to work, how many people were at work, how many people were at home, and I actually experienced it in consciousness with absolute clarity in this dream state. I was in a dream, but I was very blissed out from my meditation when I went to sleep. And that's what happens in singularity. You're not just theoretically everywhere. You're not in this adrenaline high state where you're like, wow, and you're looking out at the lake or the snowy mountain.
Right.
And that lasts like 30 seconds and then you're bored again. This isn't like that. You're actually literally in this immensely bright bliss state, and you're really there. So you actually know what's happening inside of the tree. There are yogis that actually say this, that the trees have the memory of every historical thing that has ever happened in their presence.
Right.
And that would mean that the trees on Elm Street in Dallas actually know where every shooter was and who killed John F. Kennedy that day. They actually know, and if you go to the tree in this state of oneness, singularity, you will have a vision, and the tree will tell you exactly what happened. And that's what really good psychics do. They go to the crime scene, and all of the elements in the scene have the memory, because every cell is recording everything, and they know what really actually happened in the historical record versus what somebody's story was. So...
Go ahead and finish. I have to read the last two tweets that came in back to back.
No, it's okay.
I have to read these to you, and I am so rude. I'm going to get email. Jimmy, you're being rude. You just interrupted David. You interrupt your guest all the time. But I have to do this in real time. Spiritual Warrior just tweeted, not really difficult if you involve entanglement, then duality and bilocation events are quite commonplace. That's his tweet. And then right behind him comes in Dennis, and he tweets, making a singularity is like trying to make a one-sided coin. That's all I have to say. It's strange how you either get it or you don't, or either it's possible or it's not. Either you're going to accept it or not. You know, it's bizarre to see this.
Yeah, see, your mind is going to try to figure out how to make it. Like classical physicists have said, if you can create a monopole magnet, a magnet that is truly only one pole, there's no positive and negative, it would travel at the speed of light. But yet, there are people, and I know good engineers who know how to make a monopole, but I've never seen a monopole travel at the speed of light. Or has anybody ever created a monopole magnetic field around as an envelope around a spacecraft and then see how fast it'll go? Will you encounter less drag on the wing of an airplane, or will you encounter less inertia?
Sure.
So these things need to be tested, and they probably are being tested at Lockheed Skunk Works.
Next question. Have you ever spent time in a flotation tank?
My dad, is a psychologist from Berkeley in the 60s, and I think he got his PhD in the 70s, actually, at Berkeley, and he bought us one, and we had one in the basement. And when we got the flotation tank, friends were lining up around the block to go in there, and it's really quite astounding. See, the secret to deep meditation, to go into what is known as the clear light state, or the chrisms in Christianity, or the samadhis of India, Satori of Japan, the secret to meditation is a combination of a very gentle concentration and relaxation, let go. And the let go has to get so deep that you forgive yourself all the pain and all of the wrongs that happened to you and all the things you did wrong and all your guilt. You let it all go. The forgiveness part of mystic Christianity is so deep. Don't wait for Jesus to forgive you. You got to forgive yourself. You got to let it all go. Let it all go so deeply that if you relax into your true self, this bliss, this real ecstasy is actually everywhere. It's in the floor, the walls, the wood. It's actually everywhere. It's our true nature to be in this state. But we lost the ability to relax. And these flotation tanks are quite good at giving you the advantage with floating in the salt and the perfect silence and the black to let go a little bit more than you could if you're lying on your mattress.
I've got to try it. I've got somebody at Venice Beach that has made the offer. I got to go do it. Next question. Are ghosts, spirits, and your consciousness after death singularities?
Oh, no. I mean, in order to reach true singularity, I've seen hundreds of ghosts over a 14-year period with my physical eyes open with perfect clarity. And I can tell you that very few of them are in the singularity state. It's a little easier when you lose your body to feel the bliss and the clear light nature of reality. But it's quite frightening if you're going to hang on to your heavy stuff. If you're not willing to forgive and let everything go, even when you die, the light of heaven, which is really everywhere, it will be difficult for you to be that high. Because the truth of heaven is it's a very high vibration. And not all people, when they die, seem to be able to let go of their pain, mainly their pain. And the other thing, and this was a conundrum for St. Francis of Assisi when he asked Jesus, first I want to experience the pain of the crucifixion. So Francis he's the first saint to receive the stigmata. He starts bleeding from his hands and his feet. And then he says, now, Jesus, I want to feel the love and the bliss you had for all humanity. And Francis was begging him to stop. He said the levels of love and ecstasy were so far beyond his wildest dreams. He was saying, please, please stop. This is way more difficult to bear than the pain. So we become very addicted to anger and hanging on and resentment. But when you die, there's this great Buddhist monk that I used to meditate on Crenshaw Boulevard in Los Angeles, a Japanese sensei. I used to go there on Friday nights and meditate for hours with him. And he said, forgive. No, he said, no, you need to forget everything. meaning you forget everything, the good, the bad, all of it, because even what you think is good is still boring compared to this bliss, how deep this bliss ecstasy gets. And the closer to singularity you get, there's no end to how bright the mind and the soul get. So when you die, you only go to a level that you're able to withstand and be comfortable with. Which Christ showed me is the first heaven, and I experienced it, I've been all the way to the sixth, is the first heaven is about 1,000 times brighter than the greatest human love you could possibly know in a relationship. So get ready for that. That's where we're all headed.
Wouldn't your head just explode?
No, because
I mean,
it's so
seriously.
The light is so peaceful. It's not like adrenaline. You know, adrenaline begs you to calm down eventually, right? It's like, okay, I'm really high in my adrenaline. I just did my skydive and I'm really high.
Right.
But now you want to calm down. It's not like that. It's very sustained with perfect peace, perfect balance. But that's where we're headed. That's what we all really deserve is bliss consciousness.
Can you ask David about his speed calculations in the NASA videos?
Well, I mean, it's hard in those videos because the NASA's using these black and white cameras that can see invisible wavelengths of light, and some of the videos are shooting frames very slowly and they replay at a faster speed. So but yet most of them seem to be in real time. I mean, I really did my homework on that. So when you're looking at these balls of light zipping around the planet, there's no doubt from my sources at NASA that they're traveling in the speed range of, up to 30 and 40,000 miles an hour, some of them. And there's no physical craft that we know of inside of the Earth's atmosphere that can do that.
Does David think, I'm just reading these in order, so they, like I said, they may seem out of context, but I want to try to get them all in.
Yeah.
Does David think that we can initiate the different mind states by using frequency?
Oh, of course. I mean, there's no doubt that, using my mantra transmitters, that they can assist you into getting into and expanding your brainwave state potential. See, I believe that there are some people that just used abject, meaning meaningless frequencies just to relax you. So let's say I'll give you 5 hertz because I know 5 hertz is upper delta brainwaves. Well, I won't give you 5 hertz. I'd rather give you the frequency of the wavelength of Jupiter or Saturn, which is way lower than that, but it's a very precise signature number that exists in nature. Or I would give you a frequency of 1.61803398887 because that's phi. Why would you want 5 hertz? It's kind of like tuning into a radio frequency and just throwing you off into the static. Give you a frequency that actually has a location in consciousness. There's no doubt that we're affected by frequencies. Our brains are producing frequencies. Our heart produces a very low frequency. And we are frequency beings, absolutely. We dream at the frequency of Earth. I mean, that's where we dream. Between 7 and 8 hertz is our dreaming band. So we're beings of frequency, absolutely. But very precise tuning of frequencies of different star systems and different planets will help you. They won't do it for you like the blue pill or the red pill decision in the Matrix. You can't expect a pill to do everything for you. You can't expect a frequency. You're just going to sit back and you're going to read your magazine and get pulsed by Palladian frequencies and have an experience. You've got to work with it. Like, for example, the science of sound or mantra in ancient India is that if you repeat certain mantras to a specific deity, you're eventually going to have an experience with that deity, but it may take you millions of times saying that mantra, but you're eventually going to tune to it. With magnetic wave frequency or mantra, which is the technology I've developed, that speeds up thousands of times because magnetic waves are far more penetrating to your DNA than a sound wave. So if I transmit the frequency of Venus to you as a magnetic wave, you're going to tune to Venus really fast. And as opposed to if I give you the mantra for a goddess on Venus, it's going to take you a lot longer. But you got to practice. I mean, I realize the biggest problem I see in the modern spiritual world is just give me ayahuasca so I can have an experience. But most people I know in Hawaii who did ayahuasca were just meeting demons. And that is honest. I saw so many of them get completely messed up by that stuff. And then one person said they saw an angel of light, and everybody's doing it. And, you know, I'm not against plants. It's kind of like Carlos Castaneda. He starts you with a plant, gets you loosened up a bit, and then he teaches you how to do it without the plants. The problem with our culture is they don't graduate. They just stay stuck on the plant, and they want the plant to do it for them every time, and they become a drug addict. The plant is only there to knock you out of the box, show you what's possible, but then you got to learn how to meditate.
Are you watching Twitter right now? Are you watching?
No,
because that question just came in. It just came in. What's David's take on psychedelics? And
oh my God! Well, I just tuned right into Twitter.
Yeah, that was pretty trippy.
There you go. See, it's part of being everywhere all at once.
All right, here's an easy question. I'm just going in order. Do you have a video or YouTube channel with your tonal melodies?
Well, you just go to davidsereda.net and you can download samples of, like, for example, I have this page called, it's called Project Astral Stargate. And in Project Astral Stargate, you're using the frequencies of Pleiades or Vega or Spica or Alpha Centauri or Sirius or Arcturus. And what you're going to do is devote at least a month to just meditating to those sounds with your headphones. And you're going to try to have an experience, and then you're going to archive your experience and send it to me. But see, headphones are way weaker than my mantra transmitters. But I realize my mantra transmitters, you know, they're handmade by me. They're expensive. And most people don't want to spend that kind of money, $1,400 on those. So they want to just play with the sounds. Well, the sounds are only $3. So you can, I've had people pulse the Pleiades sounds, and they have a dream, you know, within a week of, you know, Pleiadian beings or light beings. You know, they don't use the word Pleiades in Pleiades. That's our word. They appear as light beings, and there's people having experiences just with these sounds. Now, there are some people who just listen to them and it sounds really nice, but they're like, you know, nothing happened. Well, how many times did you do it? You know, go to India and tell your guru you chanted the mantra once and nothing happened and you feel ripped off. I mean, come on. These people chant Hare Krishna for 10 years sometimes before they have an experience. You got to work at it.
Is your middle C 515.1 hertz?
Yes and no. I don't use A, B, C, D, F, G. I don't just move C and then keep everything else the same. I have 360 tones. I have a minor, a bass, and a major scale of 120 tones each. So there's 10 octaves times, there's 12 octaves times 10 tones. The chromatic scale is 12 tones times 8 or 9 octaves. So there's more tones and more octaves in this ancient scale that we're working with here. And my online meditation course is real. I really advise people, if you want to learn how to meditate from someone like me who's been doing it for 35 years, who can really guide you into how to really get into these states.
How does David feel about what CERN is doing and trying to amp up the power on the LHC?
Well, you see, they're now getting close to, 18 trillion electron volt energies, which don't exist in the current state of the universe anywhere in this solar system. There's nowhere on the sun where you'll see energies that high, but you have to understand the volume of space that they're producing energy levels that high is a very tiny amount of space, but that doesn't mean anything. Even in a tiny amount of space, you can produce a micro wormhole, and a micro wormhole could have some profound effects and changes for the entire planet. I think they're playing around with enormous energies that may be contributing to some instabilities on the planet right now. I don't think they know as much as they pretend to know. These guys, remember, they're just pretending. We all pretend we know something until you can get a verifiable data and result on your experiment that is consistent and reliable. So we're just pretending, and we know this because every time somebody has a theory, it eventually gets proven wrong, and there's a new theory.
Right.
So we're constantly outdoing ourselves. So
I was just phone lines are open. I apologize for ignoring phone calls. I get sucked up, David. You suck me in. I'm serious. 323-825-5045. 323-825-5045. I am only probably 10% through the list of questions that I have. I'm just gonna go in order here. If you believe in Christ, do you believe in what Christianity is teaching?
Well, that's a really vague question because Christianity disagrees with itself 1,000 times. I mean, there are so many different forms of Christianity, and each one egotistically says they're right and the other one's wrong. So I can tell you that I believe from all the spirits I've met and all the light beings I've met from other star systems, most of whom are very friendly, that I don't take the view that just because you see a spirit it's evil and you should be afraid, because we shouldn't live in fear. But Christ is truly the magnitudes of light and the glory of innocence and beauty and peace and wisdom and power and sacred geometries and astounding consciousness that radiates from Christ, as I saw Christ, is far beyond any being I've ever met. But my opinion of Christ is actually higher than the traditional view in the Bible. He's so supremely powerful, he had to actually reduce his vibration tremendously just to come into human form. It was only when he transfigured that the disciples could see the greater light of him, which they could not bear the sight of. They were blinded by Christ during the transfigurations, just as Saul, who became Paul, was blinded on the road to Damascus when Christ appeared. Christ is so powerful, it's astounding that he ever visited this lowly, very unevolved planet. We're very lucky that the Christ came here. It's a tremendous, tremendous blessing. But I think the church today is very far from the true Christ.
What do you mean by saying that?
Well, we know so little. I mean, we know that the Gnostic Gospels, and see, most Christian Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, would pretty much have been destroyed as well as the Gnostic Gospels if it wasn't for Paul, who was Saul. He was formerly the Jew Saul, who was working for the Romans, arresting Christians to persecute them. And they were burning all of Jesus' historical manuscripts as well as his Gospels. So there were many different organizations of Christianity that were bearing his teachings in writing and cylinder seals all over the Holy Land. But the Romans were erasing the historical record, which is why some people believe he doesn't exist, because there's very few historical accounts. Well, the reason there isn't is they wanted to erase him because he was a threat to the Roman Empire. And eventually, the Christians burned Rome to the ground under Nero in about 65 or 70 AD, somewhere in that period. And so they had to usurp Christianity and take control of it. And they used Paul's Christianity as the foundation of Christianity. And when these other gospels started to emerge, they said, these are foreign to us. You know, the first and second councils of Nicaea, and then they had councils at Trento, Italy. They had many councils in different parts of Africa, even there were councils. And some of the councils were disagreeing with each other, but you can pretty much see what was happening is the Romans had to take control of Christianity. They knew the people wanted it, and they got rid of all of the feminine aspects of the Christ and all of the divine feminine disciple relationships to Christ, and they made it an all-male church, which is what they did with the Roman Senate. The Roman Senate was an all-male Senate, and they didn't want this feminine Christianity existing in equality with men. They wanted the old Roman system with the cloak of pretending they were the new Christianity. And modern Christianity in the West is a victim of a very limited view on Christianity. They're the victim of only 4 Gospels. And they're taught that angelic providence presided over those councils, which is utter nonsense. It's very clear that just like, when Galileo said the earth wasn't the center of the universe and the church thought it was, they thought that was providence too. We know that they didn't know, and that they intentionally were trying to revamp the Roman system of governance of the people. And the real Christ remained hidden until these Gospels emerged. And as they emerge, the Catholic Church keeps saying, well, those are heresy. Those aren't real Gospels. And most people believe them because they're so afraid of hell, and they'll just do whatever they say. So I just, when you read the Gnostic Gospels, and there's way more than just the Gnostic Gospels that were destroyed. I mean, you read the Acts of John, that is one astounding piece of work, and that is not a Gnostic Gospel. The Acts of John were banned by Pope Leo for very incredible reasons, that Christ was superhuman. He was way beyond a human being in the Acts of John. And so what I'm saying is modern Christianity in the Western world, in the English translation from the Latin, which originally came from the Greek, is very far from the true Christ. And it's an enormous subject. It would take me hours and hours to really point people in the right direction in which Gospels to read and what really happens at the moment of death and beyond. It's just it's a very sad story. So why is Christianity falling? Why is it that less and less people believe? Why is eventually Islam going to triumph over Christianity in this modern era? It's very mysterious stuff.
This is a good spot to take a break. Let's do that now. Next up, Nancy, I've got your question coming up next, and we'll continue to plow through all of this, and we will also take your phone calls. We have David Sereda with us tonight. He's co-hosting, answering all of your questions. Phone lines are open, 323-825-5045. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. This is Fade to Black, Fader Nights, bespoke radio for the masses. We'll be back right after this.
KGRA Radio. Intelligent talk.
Are you a paranormal investigator, ghost hunter, or UFO skywatcher? If so, FNGinnovations.com has the product you definitely need in your investigations kit or go bag. Introducing the Morpholite Wide Beam Tactical Flashlights that put the light where you need it most. Traditional flashlights shine a focused round beam with limited line of sight in the dark. Morpholite Tactical Flashlights change all that, utilizing a revolutionary wide beam design to enable you to see safety hazards such as hanging wires and steel, pipes, and holes in the floor you just can't see with a focused round beam. In the field, where safety is paramount, a 180-degree beam increases orientation and peripheral vision in the dark. Morpholite flashlights are ideal for investigations in abandoned facilities such as houses and hospitals, factories, caves, and tunnels. Avoid those low-hanging tree branches that poke your eyes in the woods. Visit FNGinnovations.com to see a full line of tactical lights and accessories. That's FNGinnovations.com.
Now you can find all your favorite talk radio shows live, all in one place at TalkStreamLive.com. Listen from anywhere, office, home, or in your car. Just go to TalkStreamLive.com and click on one of the many live talk show hosts you want to listen to. It's free and easy. No computer? Download the smartphone apps. Never miss your favorite talk show. Find them all at TalkStreamLive.com.
This is Jimmy Church of Fade to Black. May arrives soon, and with it comes another Contact in the Desert. So join me in Joshua Tree, California, for the 3rd annual Contact in the Desert Conference being held May 29th through the 31st. 2015 brings another awesome lineup of speakers, including publisher of Legendary Times, Giorgio Tsoukalos, New York Times bestselling author David Wilcock, journalist and conspiracy expert Jim Mars, former head of UFO Project for the MOD Nick Pope, investigative reporter Linda Moulton Howe, author and contactee Travis Walton, UFO historian Richard Dolan, and many more. You don't want to miss this. Fade to Black and KGRA will be there broadcasting live May 29th. Just visit contactinthedesert.com for tickets and information. That's contactinthedesert.com.
You want to know a secret? I love ponies. I really love ponies. I'm serious. I couldn't stay sane without ponies to brush.
Why fade to black? Because you never got that pony, damn it.
This is Fade to Black with Jimmy Church on the Game Changer Radio Network and KGRA, the Global Radio Alliance.
All right, everybody, welcome back. Fade to Black. Tonight is Fader Night. And we have with us, co-hosting the show, answering all of your questions tonight, David Sereda. Back with us. Welcome, David. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. All right, let's get back to the questions. This is from Nancy. She says, what about keeping a foot in the real world, serving life purpose, and living in bliss? How do you balance the two?
Well, if I just stayed in the real world, I would be in the box. And, I always was trying to get out of the box and realize I'm stuck in this body, which is so small, 6 feet tall by, a few inches wide. And I'm like, I got to get bigger than this. I don't want to be in this box. And what the real world offers me, my mom's a lawyer, uncle's a Superior Court judge in Ontario. My dad's a doctor, psychologist, a very progressive one. At that, I just can't accept it, and I couldn't accept it even as a baby. That I was just going to believe in Christ. I remember my own baptism at 4 weeks old. Believing wasn't good enough for me. So yeah, I'm grounded. I planted over 1 million trees with my own hands. I used to do extreme sports, skydiving and mogul skiing and jumping off cornices and skiing down avalanche chutes, and I've done all the things that humans enjoy doing, but I can tell you that there's nothing, including skydiving from 35,000 feet, that compares to what meditation and spiritual life can give you. And yeah, I've done so much. I've cleaned up oil spills with my own hands. I, worked in recycling companies in Los Angeles and sold the first reusable shopping bags. I've done, worked in landmine and bomb detection, and the whole landmine issue I spent, a year on with physicists. And that stuff is very rewarding. I find that it's easier to work with nature than with human beings because it seems that nature and the mammals and animal, atrocities are much more welcoming to receiving compassion and help and aid than the human race. I mean, the human race, they can say they want things to get better, and this is a fact. I can look at this fact right now. How many people will spend $10 on a lottery ticket, and you're not gonna win, the $1 million. You know it. But if I ask 1 million people right now that this great physicist is still alive, Bogdan Castle-Magwitch, he never got the 10 million he needed to fund helium-3 fusion, that it only takes 1 million of you to give $10 each this week, and Magwitch would have his 10 million, and we'd be on our way to a better energy source. You see, the internet has the ability to cause us to all focus or be scattered. And at the present point, we're so fascinated with tidbitting information. If I post on Facebook that Magwitch needs $10 million, let's all give him $10 each, or I do a Kickstarter, I'm going to raise $1,000. And that's why things aren't getting better. Well, it's not that nobody has $10. It's they want to win the lottery. They don't want the helium-3 fusion. Now, if I say I put this product on YouTube called Oil Gator. It's the residue of cottonseed lint. It's the cottonseed lint. It's the waste cotton product. And under a microscope, it looks like penne pasta. And you throw it on an oil spill. It sucks the oil into these little penne pasta tubes, and the microbes eat the oil and bioremediate into stable matter. Well, I sent a cargo bay load of it to the Environmental Protection Agency when there was this huge oil spill off the coast of Oregon. And they said, what do you want us to do with this stuff? There's tons of it. I said, go put it on the oil spill. They lit the oil spill on fire to burn it off and blew up the tanker. They didn't use the stuff. It's the same with the current spill in California. Could I get people to use Oil Gator there, this huge waste product from cotton that will bioremediate the oil? I couldn't get them to use it in the Gulf of Mexico. I couldn't get them to use it anywhere. So you can have all these solutions, and we can all say we want to solve the problem. But what's blown my mind is, I'll just go plant trees or clean up. I used to clean up oil paddies in Malibu, when I'd see these oil paddies from the oil rigs floating around. And these girls in bikinis are asking me, hey, what are you doing, man? What are you doing with all this black stuff? I said, I'm just cleaning up oil. And he said, is anybody paying you? Are you part of an organization? I said, no, it's just here. I don't want to see this stuff. I live here. I live in Malibu. I don't want to see it. I don't need an organization to tell me to clean it up. I'm just going to go clean it up. But there's nobody else cleaning it up until somebody pays them. I go to Ted Danson Save Our Seas and I present Oil Gator. And they wanted me to pay them to promote the product to clean up the oil spills. Pay them. So that's what's wrong. We're not focused. The internet has the ability to get 10, 20 million people to give $10 every month towards a solution-based technology. And we would really, really be somewhere. But we're not there.
They should take the money that was scammed in the cancer. You remember the
right.
couple of days ago, $187 million.
I saw
scammed. That. Yeah, unbelievable.
Well, and maybe that's part of the reason. It's like nobody. They'd rather spend $10 on a lottery ticket than a new form of energy. Like even zero-point energy, I could pick 10 of the best zero-point scientists out there and progressive, road and coil makers out there, and let's fund them the $10 million to the consortium, and let's get everybody working in teamwork and build a zero-point energy machine. Now, I know I'm going to raise $1,000 if I do it because I've tried these things in the past. But the point is, as soon as we're ready, the internet is the tool, radio shows like yours are the tool, and when you're tired of seeing the oil spills like the 200,000 gallons in California right now, we'll do this. We'll all give $10 and we'll focus it on these different scientists until we have the answer.
Hey, you used to live in Santa Barbara, and I've been up there, hundreds and hundreds of times, and I would look out and you could see the pipeline, right, connected out on the platforms, and you see it coming to shore. And I would look at that and just think to myself, that is just stupid. That is a disaster waiting to happen, and boom, here we go.
Santa Barbara is the first place in Southern California I visited with my first girlfriend. We used to go to the nude beaches there in the early 80s, and going through the avocado orchards and picking organic avocados. And there was this health food store back then run by Norm Paulson that was a head of lettuce was 15 cents. Santa Barbara was utter paradise, and to see oil rigs out there is like, there's nothing that makes sense with the human race. There's nothing that makes sense.
It doesn't. And you bring
Here's my biggest complaint is this. Every time you raise the price of a house, you got to drive more cars and more workers to go to work and burn fuel to pay for the fictitious number that house costs.
That's right.
The home is so powerful. It should be so affordable and so inexpensive. We should only be working 3 days a week, driving a third of the time we're driving, using a third of the resources we're using today to do, and we could do everything. We could have everything the way it is today. But you raise the price of the house. Oh my God! I got to take on 3 jobs now. I got to drive to this job, drive to that job, do this one, pick up the kid. You got to do all this because that house has to cost more money.
Yeah, in Santa Barbara, all of those homes, Oprah, Rob Lowe, everybody living on those hills looking out. They're looking at a couple of dozen. Well, I don't even know if it's that many, but it's certainly 12 big ass oil platforms are what your view is. You spend $15 million on a house to look at an oil rig off in the distance. So sad. Let's get back to
those are the caddies that I used to always clean up in Santa Barbara and Malibu, because those rigs are always leaking a little bit of oil.
Of course they are.
Yeah, they're always leaking. You always saw the patties in Malibu and in Santa Barbara. I mean, they were always floating around the sand.
Here we go. Let's go to the next question in order. And what was the message you had, and had as an uppercase, what was the message you had to learn from the Jesus visits?
Well, it's the biggest experience of my life. I had to learn that the number one reason we're here is to suffer and give birth to compassion and love in our hearts. Because without raising your heart frequency, you don't have a chance. It doesn't matter if you shout Jesus' name and you say you're a Christian. Those are just words in the English language. Jesus said, "Many shout my name, but they're very far away from me." The only language the universe understands is love and bliss and your divine birthright to live in a state of ecstasy and peace. And if you don't do things in your life that raise and truly come from a heart-centered awareness, you're just simply not. I don't care what you think you believe. You're not going to end up in an amazing place when you die. It's just all a myth. So we're here to love, and that is the hardest thing. I mean, I went through a lot of pain being a tree planter, not making enough money to live a proper life in Los Angeles, and meeting all these women that wanted to marry me or be with me, but when they saw how poor I was, and I was meditating and doing yoga and planting trees and working on the environment, they stayed a million miles away from me. And I developed a lot of pain. I had a lot of good guy friends in LA. I had very short-lived relationships because of my poverty, but I developed a lot of pain around it. And one time the Virgin Mary appeared to me and she said, "David, it doesn't matter how unfair your life was or how those women rejected you because you were poor. It doesn't matter. You have to let it go when you're going to go to heaven when you die, because you can't carry any resentment with you." So people do what they're going to do. So if we choose relationships that are based out of love, we're going to evolve. If we choose relationships out of anything less than that, and I'm not saying we shouldn't physically be attracted to each other. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying that love should be the center. It should be the number one symbol in our beingness. And when you come from love and you see homeless people or you see suffering in children or children being maltreated, the compassion is natural. Nobody had to tell me to clean up the oil spill. I didn't have to sign up into an organization. It's a natural response. I'm going to clean up this oil spill. Even if I'm the poorest guy in Malibu, and I'm not the poorest guy in Malibu, but I'm pretty close. I was living in a yurt on my dad's ranch up there for many years, and going to yoga, and then I'd go back tree planting in Canada and work on landmine bomb detection and the nuclear fusion stuff, and that's how I lived my life in LA in those years. But that's the thing. We all have our pain. We all have what was unfair that was done to us. We all have anger and resentment around relationships at times in our life. But what the Virgin Mary said to me is, you have to forgive everyone. You have to forgive yourself for carrying your own pain. You have to forgive others in order to be light enough to be carried into the light.
You had to forgive the photographer that took that picture that you just sent me.
That's my friend. He's not a professional photographer. That's me.
I'm telling you right now, it's an amazingly great picture, but it'll stay between us. Next question. Next question. By the way, it is so 80s. I'll send you some myself. By the way.
Yeah.
Okay. Next question. Can you ask David about the 2018 DNA grade he has commented on before?
Well, see, your DNA responds to frequencies, and Luc Montagnier, who discovered the AIDS virus, proved that DNA reads very low frequencies, and it's a coil, right? It's an inductor coil receiver. So I had an experience not last Christmas, the Christmas before, where I was pulsing our room with the frequencies of a star in the Big Dipper, where it is said that the location of the Archangel Michael resides in that star, which is Benacht is what it's called. And that star, there's some very good research that it's connected to the Ark of the Covenant, and the Ark of the Covenant is a tuning device to that star. And there's some good research around that. So I experimentally was pulsing the frequencies of that star because NASA knows the radius of that star and 3 other stars around it, which gave me a really good signature. And I had a message come that night from the Archangel Michael that, see, this answers the question of the creationists and the evolutionists. You know, the Jews, the ancient Hebrews who believe the universe is, or the world is only 6,000 years old or so.
Mm-hmm.
And those who'd laugh at that and say, you know, that we evolved from apes. And what the mistake is there have been periodic regenesis. That means the human genome, the human DNA, has got an upgrade, major upgrades at many times in history. And those upgrades are a regenesis. So Adam and Eve were just like Zechariah Sitchin's work, there were many experimental versions of the first humans that were super modern. And those are regenesises. So the regenesises are usually after a major environmental force majeure, strike of the planet where most of the population dies and a new seeded race, a new genesis happens. And what Archangel Michael told me is it's actually frequencies that are used to upgrade and improve the DNA state, and that the frequencies that I had decoded in the pyramid are the frequencies that are used to regenes the human genome. And so that's what people are doing in my online meditation course, is they're meditating for 6 months to these tones that you breathe and meditate to this. You can see when you see the video, The Lost Scale on Vimeo, that the ancient pyramid music scale was far more melodic and perfect in harmony and has way less distortion than our current music scale, and it's also even better than the solfeggio scale. So that's what I mean by that.
Is the frequency of hydrogen the base hum of the universe?
Well, the frequency of hydrogen is in the gigahertz. There's several bands of hydrogen that are way up in the high. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I've researched this. I think there's one band around 60 gigahertz, and there's another band even higher. And hydrogen and oxygen are very high frequency. So everything is drawn, from the building blocks of the periodic table of elements, which are all just particles that are bound in different frequency states, that as atoms come together, you form harmonic relationships of multiple frequencies. So it's very complex stuff. We're all made of mostly water, and water is hydrogen and oxygen. So you have the two lightest elements on the periodic table. They're so light, they're almost weightless. And that's about 80% of your body's water, depending on if you live in California or not. But so you have that awareness to understand that we're mostly made of just frequencies, and everything is frequency. But the brainwave states are much lower frequency than hydrogen. Hydrogen is very high frequency. It gets way higher. I did a study on all the elements in the periodic table and what is the frequency band of material structures, bones, steel, all of it. And it's quite amazing where we're vibrating, because our internet is going to be approaching and getting into these frequencies that will eventually pass the microwave spectrum and the high, gigahertz spectrum, where most material is vibrating. Most material is vibrating in millions to billions of hertz. Most material. I don't think there's any studies of physical matter at the terahertz level.
Interesting. You got me there. I'm going to have to think about that all night now.
It's quite amazing to think about.
It is. It truly is. It truly is.
Even cesium, which is used to keep atomic time and run the most accurate clocks on Earth, is about just 9 gigahertz. So it's it's vibrating less than hydrogen. Hydrogen and oxygen are way higher than that. So when you get into the heavier elements, it's down lower in the gigahertz, and then it gets into the megahertz. So when you think of how high the frequency of light is, what would happen if you vibrated our bodies into a trillion, quadrillion hertz? Quadrillion hertz is approaching the infrared band of light, and then you get into visible red light, and that's way higher than quadrillion hertz. So if we physically start vibrating at the frequency of light, well, we become light.
Yeah, you disappear.
You would disappear.
Interesting. Do you have to get permission? I think this question is basically an overview of your knowledge. But the question is, do you have to get permission to divulge this info? And is there a prerequisite to whom can have said knowledge?
Well, that's kind of a ridiculous question, and that's what our universities try to do, is they try to say we're the authority on knowledge. And this is a good question, because did the universities invent the telescope? Did they invent electricity? Did they invent what Tesla invented? Did they invent the airplane? No, they didn't. The universities come along after the fact, when somebody discovers something outside of the box that everyone said that you can't do in university. You can't invent remote control. That's what university scientists told Nikola Tesla.
Can you ask? Okay? Let me back up. I'm out of order on the questions. Why don't ETs just bathe Earth? Oh, did I lose you, David?
Yeah, you lost me on that one.
Yeah, you came and went. Okay, let's go back.
You see, I think we'd like to think that the universities are the authority and they can give you credentials to say, you're educated now. But come on, it's same with the church. Are you trying to tell me that I need the church to tell me that I met Jesus or I didn't? I went to the head of the St. Monica's Catholic Church, and he said, if you're meeting Jesus, you don't need to talk to me. And he turned his back on me. I mean, these people are... See, that's one thing that the people like the Wright brothers who invented the airplane, they eventually figured out. You just got to go out there and do it.
Why don't ETs just bathe Earth in good vibrations?
Well, why don't we bathe Earth in good vibrations? Because we know how to do it. We know how to do it.
That's a great question. It's actually
that's a question coming from a child who says, "Mom, could you clean up my mess?"
Yeah, right. Well, we're always asking for help. We're always looking for the easy road out. We're always looking for that for somebody else to do it.
One thing about the Creator is it's so, a caveman would discover fire and that oil burns and oil would make a good fuel. But you have to really evolve mentally and spiritually to figure out zero-point energy. You have to become so advanced in your consciousness to figure out how to go from one star to another. And it didn't make it easy, boy. It made it really hard. And I think the reason the Creator made it so hard to go from one star to another is it wanted us to attain a state of nonviolence and peace before we started moving around out there. Because in our current state, we're afraid of everything that moves, and if we were traveling around in the stars, it would be a lot worse than Star Trek. I mean, Star Trek in the 60s was adventurous and fun, and there were beautiful women on other planets, and these guys were having a great time. And once in a while, they got into some battles with some bad aliens, but it was mostly a wonderful adventure. Today's sci-fi movies, the aliens are pretty menacing.
This is a little complex, but here we go. When are they finally going to make themselves known to us?
Well, they've already made themselves known to many of us, and I think the question is when you're personally ready. And don't assume that just because they're ETs in a really nice spaceship that they're more spiritually evolved than you or I may be. Some of them are more evolved and some of them are not. But again, it's more about curiosity and shared presence and meeting them and finding out. See, to me, the purpose of trying to make contact with Palladians or Syrians is I want to know, how did you do it? Like, how did you prevent your race from destroying itself, or did they destroy themselves and you're now out in space? I just want to know. There's so many questions you would ask an extraterrestrial that, how did you evolve?
Do they eat, by the way? Do they eat? Do they physically eat? Where do they get their energy from?
Well, I mean, that is a really great question. I don't think I've ever asked the Palladians or any being, it's kind of funny. You watch all these movies in Hollywood and no one's ever sitting down and having a meal.
Right.
Very often. And you don't see anyone actually pick up food and put it in their mouth. And like you did in the old movies, or if you're watching Michael Landon's TV series, you can see the family sitting down and eating. But it would be the last question I would ask them. What did they eat?
Did you, when you were visiting with them, could you smell food? What did you smell? Did you smell?
No, I've never seen. When I saw the Palladians, it's kind of like it's a hologram. My eyes are open. I'm seeing them right in front of me, but I'm seeing very advanced Palladians that are now light beings. They're literally physically luminous. They're the ones that are physical that I've met. There was one Palladian girl that was telling me how they discovered super water in the star system Spica, which I'd never heard of Spica at that time.
Right.
And by drinking this really high energy water, it was easier for them to change their physical atoms into light and jump around the universe. So, there are yogis in India who can do these same things. I mean, if you read Yogananda's, Paramahansa Yogananda's book, you'll realize that there are yogis that know how to physically dematerialize. There are Tibetans that can do it, like Milarepa, who can quantum leap from mountaintop to mountaintop. So if you do enough yoga and meditation, some of these powers start to become available to you. And the Palladians told me that they eventually had to stop using spaceships to visit Earth because we kept shooting at them every time they materialized their craft, and they learned how to just quantum leap. Now, I had an experience in Sedona. I was driving home. I had given a presentation at the Creative Life Center. This was only a couple of years ago. And I literally, it's nighttime, my headlights are on, I'm coming down into the village of Oak Creek, and there is a man with a lightsaber and a cloak around his head walking on the highway, right almost not in the middle of the road, but he's just off to where my right headlight is. And I thought I was going to hit him. And he suddenly just vanished. He dematerialized right in front of my eyes. And I swear I saw this. And he started speaking to me telepathically, and he said, there's many of us on your planet that know how to do this, that know how to quantum leap. And there were times when I was looking at the NASA space shuttle footage and I would see these lights shooting up from down on the Earth and then out into space, and I was wondering, where some of these are not craft, they are clearly some type of luminous being that are showing up in these NASA cameras, and they're about the size of a human. And that is what this is all about. I mean, there are examples in our religions of people who are able to dematerialize in quantum leap. There's examples of Christ doing it in the Gnostic Gospels, and I think it is in the realm of possibilities. I read an incredible paper by Colin Kelleher, who worked for Bob Bigelow. He's a physicist, and he took on this exact subject of what was in the DNA of individuals who had the ability to quantum leap and resurrect their bodies and move around the universe at will. So you don't necessarily need a spaceship to do this.
You know what? We're up against a break. I'm trying to get these questions in order here. Let's go ahead and do that. Let's take a quick break. When we come back, I'm going to open up the phone lines again, and let's do that. This is Fade to Black tonight. Co-hosting with me, David Sereda, answering all of your questions. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. This is Fade to Black, bespoke radio for the masses on the Game Changer Network and KGRA, The Planet. Stay with us, David. We'll be back right after this short break. Stay with us.
Despite popular opinion, reading a book will not make you smarter.
But listening to Jimmy Church will.
Attention, all FADERNIGHT. Studio Dome has a special deal on their SD1 Bluetooth speaker. Just go to jimmychurchradio.com, click on their banner, enter the promo code Jimmy, and you get $40 off and free shipping on the SD1. It's voice activated, comes with a USB antenna, cables, and a carry bag. Never listen to your phone, tablet, or laptop speakers ever again. It's the only way to listen to Fade to Black. That's jimmychurchradio.com, Studio Dome banner, promo code Jimmy. Go Beckley Teppy.
Erica, Brittany, Gabby, and you're listening to JimmyChurchRadio.com.
It's not a lifestyle we chose. We were born this way. KGRARadio.com.
This is Jimmy Church of Fade to Black. May arrives soon, and with it comes another Contact in the Desert. So join me in Joshua Tree, California, for the 3rd annual Contact in the Desert Conference being held May 29th through the 31st. 2015 brings another awesome lineup of speakers, including publisher of Legendary Times, Giorgio Tsoukalos, New York Times bestselling author David Wilcock, journalist and conspiracy expert Jim Mars, former head of UFO Project for the MOD Nick Pope, investigative reporter Linda Moulton Howe, author and contactee Travis Walton, UFO historian Richard Dolan, and many more. You don't want to miss this. Fade to Black and KGRA will be there broadcasting live May 29th. Just visit contactinthedesert.com for tickets and information. That's contactinthedesert.com.
This is KJCR at JimmyChurchRadio.com.
All right, everybody, welcome back. This is Fade to Black. Thursday night, Fader night. I did it again, man. I'm ignoring calls. I swear I will pick them all up now. 323-825-5045. 323-825-5045. I'm not ignoring you guys. I'm just engaged with Mr. Sereda. Okay. Back to the questions, and I've got them lined up. Does he believe faster than light might actually be a form of large-scale entanglement and a gating effect?
Well, yeah, there's a recent study that was done by some physicists from the University of British Columbia and other worldwide physicists on these tensors that are quantumly entangled at huge distances all over the universe, and that they are faster than light, instantaneous, as Einstein discovered with action at a distance, what is known as action at a distance. And they're starting to get to the point where they're inadvertently stumbling upon consciousness being responsible for everything that's faster than light. And they're eventually going to get to that point. And I find it funny that physicists don't acknowledge consciousness, because you need an observer for everything. There's nothing happening without an observer, and there's no such thing as an observer that isn't conscious. So, you kind of imagine you're driving down the road and you're not there. There's no cows there. There's no cat. Is anything happening? I mean, do you need eyes for this to exist? And senses? And that is where you get into non-local consciousness and the state of consciousness I was describing earlier of singularity. And in the state of singularity, the whole field is actually seeing. The whole field is sensing, feeling everything at a phenomenal level of sensitivity. So the whole universe is aware, and it's not only aware of everything, it has assemblage points where all of the data is getting assembled to. And that is a super advanced area in quantum physics, as to whether and where the assemblage points of all the data are. But see, we have eyes, so we say our assemblage point is the brain. But then you think of, is there a collective human mind that represents all of humanity, that's collecting the entire human experience and assembling it? And just like all the cells in your body can think they're individual cells, but they're all the data is getting assembled in your brain. So that's where the conscious universe gets much more difficult, and that is the universe is definitely sensitive, it's sensing everything, but where does it all get assembled? And that's where you get into the idea of God or many God points. I mean, nobody knows these answers.
What does David think of the Lacerda constellation?
Nothing, because I've never heard of it.
I thought that there was going to be something deeper there. I mean, I know what Lacerda is, and I know where it is, and I've heard of it, but I didn't know of any connection to anything. And
I could certainly look up whether there's any radius data on those stars and generate those frequencies and see if anybody can make contact. I mean, that's what I'm trying to do with Project Astral Stargate. I'm trying to say that let's all pick targets, like remote viewing with frequencies is what it is, and let's see if we can find out what's going on in different stars and star systems. Like every time NASA finds a new exoplanet, you can see a radius there, but I don't know. It's harder to get the radius of an exoplanet than it is a star.
Well, Lacerda is it's in between Cygnus, Cassiopeia, and Andromeda.
Well, Andromeda is way out there. That's our closest galaxy. I know Cassiopeia. So, yeah, I mean, these are things to do. I mean, remember this big story that was on Coast to Coast AM years ago when Richard Hoagland said that there was a signal coming from EQ Pegasus.
Right.
And EQ Pegasus is a binary star. NASA doesn't know the radius because there's two stars stuck close together in the optics, and you just can't figure out the radius on those. And I was really mystified by that story. I don't think that story is a deadpan at all. I re-listened to the old episodes on YouTube, and there was something going on there. There's something going on there.
Oh, Brandon just tweeted and he said, "That's my question. I'm referring to the Lacerda interview with the so-called alien living on Earth." See, I thought he was referring to the Lacerda constellation. That's the Lacerda.
Well, I don't even know the second part of the question. See, there's so many stars out there I've never heard of. If you study astronomy, you would know this. Like when I met a little Palladian girl who told me they went to Spica and they found superwater, I'd never heard of Spica. So I get up, I Google Spica, and I find out it's a star in the Virgo constellation. Great. See, that's even more amazing when you never even heard the name of it before, and you find some spirit being is telling you the name of a star, and you can Google it and find it. So that's how it goes. I'm really an amateur astronomer because there's just too many star systems to know. I mean, I know the Big Dipper, and I know.
Yeah, me too. That's this comes in from Rick. Rick says, "Was Jesus white, or was he more geographically accurate to the area?"
Well, just the questioner doesn't seem to know. There's a lot to know historically. For example, Robert Temple, who wrote Egyptian Dawn, said that there was a time when Egyptologists were digging under the sands of the Nile Delta, and they found the brown-skinned Egyptians, and they thought they were the founders of the civilization. They dug deeper, and they found African mummies, and then they went deeper, and they found the blonde-haired, blue-eyed, and the red-haired, blue-eyed mummies. And so you have to understand, Jesus was raised in Egypt. His family fled Herod's reign, and they went to Egypt, just like Moses was raised in Egypt. And the Egyptian Christians, the Coptics, have incredible historical records of his childhood there. And there's also a lot of good research to suggest, in very rare footage accounts, visually, one by Pontius Pilate, how different Jesus looked than the other brown-skinned, brown-bearded men, and how soft his features were, and his hair color was different. He was lighter skinned. But to me, the race is so, I don't care if Jesus was Chinese, Japanese, African, or white. It makes no difference. Jesus is not even human. Jesus is God. He is the most blinding being this side of the universe, being a little mere human being. It really doesn't matter what race the body was that he lived in. But when you study what Robert Temple presents in Egyptian Dawn, the oldest Egyptians were the red-haired, fair-skinned, blue-eyed mummies. And when I saw Christ, I've seen him standing right in front of me. He was a reddish-brown-haired man, definitely much stronger physically than anyone could possibly imagine. And his neck was incredibly thick and wide, and his arms had the power not of a bodybuilder. You don't see muscles like that today. Only people who work with stone have I ever seen arms and a neck like that. And there are features. He's definitely Hebrew, but there's other DNA in there. He was not. It's like me, I'm Ukrainian, English, Irish, and French, and probably a whole bunch of other things on two different sides of the family. So to say he was one DNA, it would be a very difficult thing to pin down.
What is David's take on the divine feminine, and why was she all but erased from Western history, save for the watered-down passive Mary?
All I can say is I know everything about it. You need to see my film, Mona Lisa's Little Secret. Just go to my website at davidsereda.net and watch that film on Vimeo.
Well, tell me right now. I want to hear it. I'll watch your video later. Now I'm interested.
You got to see how Mary Magdalene appeared to me and showed me how to decode the Mona Lisa painting. But there's no doubt the Gnostic Gospels are very wealthy in the accounts of all of the feminine aspects of Christ consciousness, and Mary Magdalene was no prostitute. There is so much clarity in the divine feminine in Christ in the Gnostic Gospels. It's very clear why the councils at Nicaea in Trento, Italy, removed women by removing the Gnostic Gospels. You could not have the Gnostic Gospels and ignore the fact that women were clearly equal to men in the image of, in the iconography of God. And there are examples in the Acts of John where Jesus actually transfigures into a blinding light. He disrobes in front of John. And John says, this is why they removed this gospel. I saw his hinder parts, and he was not a man at all. And if he was not a man at all, he was clearly transfiguring into a woman. And it was too shocking for John to see something like that. But he did it as an example to show that God is both masculine and feminine. And that gospel is not very well known. It's not in the Gnostic Nag Hammadi library collection. You just got to Google the Acts of John and read the whole thing. It's an astounding manuscript. Very accurate, very dated properly. It is definitely not a heresy.
I tried to, I'm no Bible expert. I'm not even close. But I tried to, maybe 15 years ago, try to get into discovering exactly who Mary was. When the whole question about them being married and the Da Vinci Code and how all of that sensationalized things, but it also caused a lot of awareness, and a lot of people went into researching it, and I did the same thing. And I couldn't resolve in my own mind this whole, Mary was a prostitute thing in what was referenced in the Bible at all. I mean, if she loaned him some money or supported his ministry, doesn't make her a prostitute. I don't know. I couldn't figure out any of that. It just seemed like that was more of a modern account and in an attempt to remove her importance to the big picture.
Well, there's this new book out. I read all of it that proves or argues the marriage of Mary Magdalene and Jesus. But you just have to ask yourself a logical question: why did he appear to her first and not the other disciples to show the evidence that he had resurrected? And certainly the answer is right there. But most people buy the official story that we're given in the Western world, but they don't trace the history back to the original Greek. Now, I'm not saying the modern Greek. If you go read a Greek Bible today, it's just from the original Greek to Latin and back to Greek. You have to read these Gospels in the original Greek and really learn what's going on. And then you have to know the history of modern Christianity, the councils, and why they're arguing against all these other Gnostic Gospels. And one thing about the Gnostic Gospels is most of them are post-crucifixion resurrection. They're appearances of Christ to the men and the women after he resurrected. And the evidence is very clear that Jesus transformed his physical body into a body of light, which there are many Tibetan masters who have done at the moment of death, whether the death is natural or traumatic. It's clear that he wasn't the only one who's ever done this, and it's clear that Osiris was reconstituted back or resurrected by his wife Isis, and that there was an art to resurrection that Jesus might have learned when he was raised in Egypt. But the thing is there is very clear that the wealth of divine feminine knowledge in Christianity was buried. It's very clear that that's what the thread of the Gnostic Gospels were about. And Mary Magdalene was not a prostitute, nothing anywhere near a prostitute.
Let's change gears. We're at the end of the show, by the way. Now I'm going to ask you a couple of questions for myself. Mm-hmm. All right. John Titor, the time traveler. What do you know about John Titor?
Well, I know something about a particular time traveler that was on Art Bell years ago, but I'm not sure if we're talking about the same guy.
Okay, well, then you first, and then I'll go. What do you know about the time traveler that came on Art Bell? Maybe the same guy.
This was quite a while ago, and then he disappeared for many, many years, and then he reappeared, and I think he made an appearance on George Norrie, and I actually was having regular emails with him, and he had to hide his location. He was always moving around, and eventually had a lot of conversations with me. He was interested in everything I was doing, all my science and physics and my differential mathematics and my vortex galaxy clock. He was all over all of it.
Okay, this is what I want you to do, and I knew you were going to go there. You and I are going to talk off the air. Let's do it tomorrow, and we're going to trade some information back and forth, and then I will explain to you tomorrow in person over the phone why we have to do it off of the air. Mm-hmm. And I will I appreciate that, and we'll figure some stuff out together. There's a reason. There's always a reason for my madness. And so let's do that tomorrow. One of the last questions, David, when you, with all of this knowledge, and let me go back and, the picture that you sent me earlier and the guy that I'm talking to now, I know that they're the same guy, but the guy today is enlightened, and I don't know what percentage of your brain that you are using versus me but it's probably triple. And I'm not making light of it. I'm being 100% serious. When you walk around during the day, what is it that you see? Are you seeing in colors? Are you seeing other things? Are you seeing the world the same way that you did before all of this knowledge came down and fell upon you?
Well, I love that question. It's probably my favorite question, and that is, that guy who was walking around in that picture was a deep meditator and spiritual explorer. Even in those days, I had astounding experiences, and it was hard to come into Los Angeles and go from these massive spiritual experiences and try to find a way to communicate to the world what I was experiencing. And I wanted to do it through film. And then, one day, I get this call from Art Bell that he wants to have me on a show, but I can't talk about my experiences with Christ because the executives don't want me talking about it. I was on the phone with all the executives, all these executives. There were 3 of them, and they wanted me to tell them the whole story of meeting Christ, and they said, no, wow. They said, you can't talk about that on our show. But Art said, let's talk about the NASA UFO stuff. So I found my way into communicating my spiritual experiences to the world. But see, in the daytime, when I'm not meditating and I'm in a normal state of consciousness, I perceive more in nature probably than a person who's not meditative. I can literally sit inside of another person's soul, and it scares them sometimes when I look in their eyes. I could be walking down the street, and sometimes I'll glance at someone, and they'll be terrified because I see all the way through them. And there was a time right after I had met Christ in Topanga where, and this actually happened, where I said anybody can ask for any miracle they want and they're going to get it, but it can't be a miracle for me, for myself. It has to be selfless. So I was driving home from work in Orange County on the landmine detection, and there was a child missing on the beach in Pacific Palisades, and the helicopters were going up and down all night. And a girlfriend of mine, Trish, called me from the valley and said, I want to save that girl's soul. And I said, okay, it's done. And the news broke that they couldn't find her all night. She's just a little girl. And they found her walking on the beach the next morning. And this is a tiny stretch of beach. It's a couple 100 yards long. I mean, a bunch of helicopters for an hour and a half before sunset can't find one little girl on a small stretch of beach. They found her the next morning, and she said she fell asleep in the water and she was floating in the water all night. And then she woke up and she was on the sand. That was in a small newspaper. And that's the kind of stuff that was happening around these experiences. But when you're in a state of clear light or samadhi walking around, everything is luminous. You see every person you look at is so beautiful and so astounding in their true God self, even though they don't see that in their own self. And you really just look at people and you're just amazed at how phenomenal human beings really are.
Thank you for coming on tonight. I absolutely enjoyed everything and going through and answering all of these questions. Bam, 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 bam. Just meant the world to me.
Yeah.
And all of the listeners. Thank you so much. And we've got a lot to talk about, and we'll be in touch tomorrow. Oh, real quick, I just brought in Les, our producer. He closes out every Thursday night show with me. So, Les, say hi to David. David, say hi to Les.
Hey, Les.
Hey, David. How you doing? If you have one moment, Jimmy, could I ask him one question real quick?
Sure.
Okay. Now, I don't know much about the Palladians, Mr. Sereda, so please bear with me. Did the Palladians live in our dimension originally and start traveling dimensions like we want to travel our universe, or do they live in the third dimension?
Well, just like humans, most of us appear to be living in 3 spatial dimensions, but there are humans that are so advanced right here on this planet that the media has no access to, that can jump dimensions and live in higher dimensions of Earth right now. And people like me who have had the ability to see them right here on the Earth, living here, when you have that experience, you know that that's actually happening. And so, yeah, many star systems, they have beings or humanoids that have been living in many different dimensions of reality. You eventually evolve to the point that you physically can quantum leap, and I think that's what happened in Machu Picchu. I think that's what happened in the area of Sedona with the vortexes. There were many of the Anasazi that just started quantum leaping and going into higher dimensions of Earth. And so that's our potential. The Pleiadians, the same. Once you reach that point, you become a free enterprise. You can move anywhere you want around the universe within the range of your actual spiritual ability. So don't think that the media and everything we see with our eyes is all there is. I've met cattle ranchers in the middle of the, New Mexican desert who have seen things out there that most people wouldn't believe. It's not all just UFOs.
Thank you so much, David. Yeah. Thank you for the question, Les. All right, David.
Thank you, sir.
Hey, David, be safe out there, and I'll be in touch with you first thing tomorrow. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Jimmy. Take care.
You got it, David. All the best.
All the best.
David Sereda, everybody. Wow, Les, what a week on the show. David, is he just amazing or what?
Oh, absolutely. I think he was an excellent guest host. We didn't get many calls tonight, did we?
Well, we got no.
I think everybody was enjoying him.
The thing is because I don't go and pick up the calls right away and interrupt what David's saying, people just hang up and hang up and hang up. And you know what? If you don't want to just stay on the line until I get to your call, that's on you, man. I'm not going to interrupt the guest. But
absolutely not.
I still had another 20 questions that I didn't even get to. And wow, that was just amazing.
Yeah, it was.
I just get to sit here and listen, just sit here and listen. And oh man, he is just amazing. And there you go. So, wow, what a week we had on the show. We had George Norrie last night. We had Jason Martell last night. What did you think about Norrie coming on and just being straightforward and taking questions instead of asking them?
I thought, all we hear from him normally is, himself and what we hear on the net and what, we hear from him on his show. Generally, we don't get to know a real person like that. And actually, I thought he was kind of neat. It was neat hearing just, him talking about his life. It was kind of cool. I liked it.
Yeah, and, I really can't say exactly what happened, but we chatted a little bit about it last night, and he asked me if I was happy. I said, yeah. I said, but we got to do a full interview, and so that will be coming up here in the future, and I can't wait for that. But, yeah, what a crazy, excellent, amazing, fun week on Fade to Black. I mean, and next week we're going into Contact in the Desert. And on Monday, I'll let everybody know. Normally, I just go ahead and let this wait until Sunday night. But I'm going to tell all the listeners right now. On Monday, David Wilcock. So that'll be Monday.
Oh, very cool, dude.
And wait till you see what's happening on Tuesday. And on Wednesday, we are going to blast this week out. I cannot wait to get to next week. And then after that, of course, we'll be rolling into Contact in the Desert. I need to announce to everybody, next Thursday night, we will run a best of. There won't be a Fader night next week because next Thursday night, we will already be out in Joshua Tree and getting set up for the big broadcast that'll be happening on Friday. So no Fader night next week, everybody, but I'll make it up to you Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. And don't forget, we have a very special broadcast on Friday night. So no show on Thursday, but the big broadcast on Friday. So you're going to get your 4 days next week. You're just not going to get Thursday night.
And Jimmy, next Wednesday, I'm going to be in California.
Can you believe it? It's going to be a great week. It's going to be a great week next week, man. I'm really looking forward to it. All right, so hey,
dude, the butterflies are going.
Man, oh man! All right, Les, take us out of here, man. Take us out.
Oh, okay. Special thanks to David Sereda tonight as our guest host, and thanks for all the calls from the Fade or Not who phoned home. Fade to Black executive producer is Rita Kamarian. Show is produced by Hilton J. Palm and Mark D. Kovar. Special thanks to LJ3, that's me, Renee, Jonas, and Mark Dunbar. Announcers are Steve Harder, Gene Vito, and Mark D. Kovar. Fade by Dale. Webmaster is Method of Signaling. Music is by Doug Aldrich. Intro by Spaceboy. Listen to him at spaceboymusic.com. Fade to Black is produced by KJCR for the Game Changer Network and syndicated on KGRA. And with that, for the week, Jimmy and I are out of here.
Thank you so much, Les. You have a great super weekend, my brother.
I will. You too, bro.
All right, everybody, that's it. I want everybody to be safe. Have a great weekend. This is Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Follow us on Twitter at JChurchRadio. Email us, Jimmy@JimmyChurchRadio.com. I had a great week. Thank you, Les. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Fade or Not. I want everybody to be safe. See ya.